Okay, okay, we can get started. Welcome to the June 10th, 2024 meeting of the Town of Niskayuna Planning Board and Zoning Commission. Ms. Bergami, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme.
Here.
Ms. Strain.
Here.
Mr. Khan.
Here.
Ms. Belofsky. Here. Mr. Darpino.
Here.
Ms. Gold.
Present.
Chairman Walsh.
Here. Just like to mention that this is my last meeting. I put in my resignation effective June 30th. I did communicate that to the board and town board members. I just thought I'd say that to the public before we get started. I'll have some comments later on during commission business, if you all can bear with me, okay? And thank you. All right, so we have the approval of the minutes from May 13th, 2024. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Khan for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Gold. Any changes, corrections? I have none. Anybody? No? All those in favor of approval of the minutes from May 13th, 2024, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the minutes from May 13th are approved, and thank you, Trish. We know how much fun minutes can be. Nice job. All right, we have no public hearings tonight, so we'll move right to privilege of the floor. Anyone wishing to be heard regarding any planning and zoning matters in the town of Niskayuna, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Privilege of the floor is open. Anybody? No? Anybody here for privilege of the floor?
Chairman, we do have someone
We
online.
have somebody online?
Yep.
Okay, we'll go online then.
Amna, do you want to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, everyone. I am joining virtually. I wish I was there. And my neighbor, Laura Scardino, she was actually hoping to be there this evening also, but she has a meeting. So she and I had talked the other day about the short-term rental amendments and just kind of going through, the terms and trying to make sense of it and digest it. We had a bit of a long conversation. This type of stuff is understandably, it's very layered and there are many things to take into consideration. But I think one of the challenges is as we're going through all of these terms and requirements is seeing, okay, well, is there a potential where people can find loopholes around it? And I think understanding it is one thing, and then making sure that it's clear enough that people follow it and take it seriously. And that if they do not follow it, that there are repercussions to make sure that this does not happen again, right? So we went through it, and I'm going to try my best. Sorry, I end of day, just as all of you, my mind is in a million different places. So I'm just going to try to bring up a handful of different points that we talked about that raised some questions, right? One of them was, for hosting a short-term rental property, that the owner should reside there for at least 184 days out of the year per calendar. And what we were trying to understand is, how do we prove that they've been there for 184 days? Because we have a situation in our neighborhood where apparently they're there, but we never see them. I mean, they are there. Laura, you had said that, there's texts and records of meeting them and all of that, but 184 times of the year, I don't know about that, right? And I think there just needs to be something a little bit more solid, right? Because that does make a difference in terms of a person taking accountability for what goes on in the property. The highlight that popped out to us was the fact that, so to have a rental permit, it's valid for 1 year. And then I believe you have to wait, if I'm understanding correctly, 18 months until renewing it, which is great. But then again, is there some repercussion or penalties when they do not follow suit? Other point that kind of stood out was the owners that do short-term rentals, right? Can their information be passed to the neighborhood? So there is, an understanding that there is a business being run in our residential neighborhood, right? Other thing that was kind of concerning under rental standards is, and I it's just so lengthy. It's really hard to kind of highlight the point and the concern, but something along the lines of, for every bedroom, there's like, a couple of, I have to look back at it. I just have a note here, but it was something along the lines of a ratio underlining the accepted number of people in a space. Now, the house down the road is a mansion, or next to us is a mansion, right? And so if we were to take all the so-called bedrooms in that house and use that ratio, we're talking about 24 people that are allowed to stay in that house. And again, that raises the concern, 24 people in a house that no one in this neighborhood is aware of. I mean, these people, there's no criminal background check on them. You don't know who they are. The owners of the house is not on the premise. That's a red flag, right? So I'm almost done here, but the other thing is that the way this amendment also kind of focuses on, okay, no weddings or corporate events and commercial functions are allowed. It kind of, what it does is that it just says, well, if it's a wedding or a corporate event, sorry, you can't do that. But people are still going to have their parties, right? Nothing is saying it's not a party venue. And I get you can't control and micromanage how people do things, but parties, there's alcohol, there is a lot of other things that are distributed. And when you're talking about 20 plus individuals all consuming that, where is the surveillance, right? That is where it becomes a question of our safety in the neighborhood. And that's where our concern also resides. And I think the other thing is the limit of rental time, right? So our goal here is to really secure the esteem and the integrity of Niskayuna. And it just seems that some of these amendments leave too much space for people to find loopholes. Other thing to consider is, where are the owners? How do we know if they're completely out of the premise, right? If something goes wrong and they're in another state, it's just a lot of instability here. There are there's some highlights to this. I mean, we were, it was encouraging to some degree, but then again, we were still feeling unsettled. So that would be it. Sorry.
No, thank you for your comments. And as you know, it's a work in progress, and we'll be discussing it later on in the meeting tonight. We appreciate you joining in. Okay. Do we have anybody else online, Laura?
We have an applicant online, but no one else
Okay.
under.
How about communications?
I did receive the email from Laura Scardino, and I forwarded that on to you guys today.
Yep, I had a chance to take a look at it, and I know it was tough where people are working, but we'll take her comments into consideration, and we appreciate that.
I sent her the Word document, and she also sent me some ideas that she came up with in the Word document, but I haven't had a chance to go through them yet.
Okay, we appreciate any input we can get. And I'll ask again, anybody here in the audience who would like to speak during privilege of the floor before I close privilege of the floor? Last chance. No one? Okay, hearing or seeing no one else, we'll close privilege of the floor. Thank you. And we'll move on. We have, under unfinished business, we had a resolution for 3905 State Street that applicant has withdrawn, so that resolution and that application has gone away. Under new business, we have one resolution tonight, and that's Resolution 2024-21, an amendment to Resolution 2024-04 and -18 for site plan approval for tenant change to Market 32 grocery store at 2333 Knott Street East. I'll summarize part of that resolution. And it's, as always, posted in its entirety on our webpage. Resolved, the Planning Board and Zoning Commission finds the above referenced site plan and proposed site plan amendment meets the requirements of the zoning code and previous site plan approvals, and therefore hereby approves the amended site plan with the following conditions. 1, outdoor storage. No outdoor storage or obstruction shall be allowed on the sidewalk between the main grocery store entrance and the secondary grocery store entrance to protect pedestrian passageway throughout the plaza. 2, crosswalks. Prior to completion of the building permit, crosswalks shall be striped in 6 locations identified by the planning office in the aerial map provided to the applicant labeled "Not Street Site Plan." 3, sidewalks. Prior to completion of the building permit, the missing section of sidewalk between the parking lot and Not Street East, identified by the planning office in the aerial map provided to the applicant labeled "Not Street Site Plan," shall be installed to the satisfaction of the planning office, or security to cover the cost of such improvement shall be provided to the satisfaction of the town. 4, landscaping. Prior to completion of the building permit, the applicant shall supply a landscaping plan for review and approval by the tree council. The landscaping and beds in front of the proposed Market 32 should be refreshed. Dead or severely distressed trees within the property should be removed, and any removed trees should be replanted. And 5, a building permit to install the propane tanks is required and shall include a plan for protective bollards that guard the propane tank cages from vehicular impact. The protection plan shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department and building department prior to the issuance of the building permit. Ms. Gold, do I have a motion? Ms. Gold moves the resolution for adoption. Do I have a second?
A second?
Second by Mr. Laflamme. We can have some discussion. I know we have representatives of Market 32 here. I don't know if you'd like to come up and introduce yourself. You're welcome to. If not, you also don't need to. If the board has any questions, we can ask you. Bottom line, I believe conditions 1 or 4 are carryover from the previous 2 resolutions. The only new condition is making sure that they apply for a building permit and that that's reviewed by the building department, make sure it's adequate from a safety standpoint and not blocking pedestrian traffic, which we don't expect will be happen. We have a proposed location on the map, which is over, like it kind of cuts in a little bit over near Mathnasium. And I believe the plan is to put the kiosk, exchange kiosk there, and work with the building department whether there needs to be one ballard or not. And there was some discussion about, potential or temporary blocks, but, we want something else that looks good too. So but we're going to leave that in the hands of the building department. Any other questions or comments for the applicant?
Just to be clear, there was no outdoor propane with ShopRite?
I don't recall seeing any.
No, there's not.
But this will be similar to what we've allowed in various other places through town.
Yep, Stewart's,
Yeah, I mean, like
CVS.
CVS, yeah.
And as we all know, it's been advertised and grand opening is, and so we're also trying to help out the applicant to be ready for their opening, which looks like they're doing pretty good. Stop by there just a little while ago, and there's a lot of activity going on with mulching and landscaping, and things will be covered within the conditions of the resolution.
So the only thing I was going to add is showing up a little dark on that screen up there.
Mhm.
But they're proposing to actually put it on this brick wall
Yep.
farther back here, not this little nook here.
Correct.
And I don't know if we care.
Now, could you, the applicant, one of the questions is if it's back further, how does the, this, you need to use the microphone, okay? And that does come off. If you can speak from there, it'd be great.
Yeah, I'm Bob Matarazzo with Northeast Grocery, the parent of Price Chopper and Tops Markets and Market 32. So right about where the cursor is, along that wall is where the 2 cages would be, each cage holding 21 cylinders.
Okay.
So the site plan actually shows it on
Yeah.
this wall,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
This wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the wall.
not the
Not there, correct.
right.
And how do the employees go out to provide the propane to the customer?
It's my don't know exactly, but they would visit the service desk and then somebody would escort,
So they walk out to there?
walk out, unlock the cage, exchange the cylinder, relock it.
Okay.
So like the only comment I don't have measurements, but it looks like there's more room between this door and the glass than this door and the brick. So I'm just wondering why it's better to push it so much farther away from the ShopRite.
Well, there's still the ShopRite doors. Those doors behind there are exit and entry doors to the ShopRite.
These doors here are like the shop from home doors.
Yeah.
Those are still ShopRite doors. Excuse me,
Shop-
Market 32
32.
doors.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's probably where they'll be exiting? or
Yeah,
to,
Yeah, they're only, how deep are they, Lisa? And that's left to right. And then how deep is it?
Just under 29.
So 2.5 feet, not even. almost 2.5 feet.
I mean, Laura, where we're seeing the glass forward in the picture to the right,
Yes.
is the drawing indicating there's a door there?
No, there's no door there.
The drawing
Yeah, you need
shows
to
a
come up.
door
So
there.
if you-
Right,
if you
the
have anything to say, so you can
the
get your
drawing
mic-
shows there's a, right, I'm reading that correctly. The
Yeah,
drawing
you
shows
are.
there's a door there.
Because I looked at this for a long time because it confused me where it was going. This drawing shows that there's a door where that glass is, but there's not a door there.
No, you're looking at the actual picture.
Yeah.
But there's doors again to the north on the image there. So that's where the employees would come out to access it to.
Correct.
So just to Laura's point, is there, to Laura's point, is there a reason why you want it further back as opposed to closer to the curb?
We could, if you desired that we do that, we don't really have an issue with that.
Oh, that was a little bit.
I think they're not the most aesthetically pleasing cage. So we've done such a beautiful job over there. We can, if you folks want it up front further, we haven't any issue with that. But I think it'll be out of the way there and up against the glass. Then you've got though that glass area is employee break room, and the drapes or the shades are drawn, so you don't necessarily see it there. But I think it's more appropriate further back. But
Well, if you're walking this plaza, and it's a very walkable plaza,
Yes.
when you're walking from the other businesses like Uncle Rico's, if you put it on that brick wall, you're going to be walking towards the propane. Whereas if you like tuck it by the glass,
which we could do too.
yeah, I don't know. It seems more out, darker, like more not connected to ShopRite the farther back you put it.
And I like to push back.
You like it pushed back?
Yeah, it was a concern. It was more toward the interior, like not so much on the exterior as a, flammable substance. Was that the concern, or was it the pedestrian traffic? Because I don't see how the pedestrian traffic will see it
So,
easier when it's further back. I think it would be less visible.
well, if you're walking like here's Uncle Rico's is like here, for instance. So if you're just walking up and down this plaza, you're going to be the sidewalk is inset. So the propane tanks are set to be right here.
No, well, that's not where they're going to be set, right? They're going to be set
It'll be set
further
further
in.
back.
No, the door to like Market 32 from home is in line with these businesses here.
Yeah.
Okay.
These businesses have a door. It's all staggered. These have a door that
Yeah.
is farther out, and then like the glass is like somewhere in here.
I think the under canopy uprights, if you will block some of that. I don't think it's exactly a direct visibility if you're coming from that side of the center. I think it's kind of around the corner. It's not direct view.
I
Again, if
walk
you feel that
there
it's
at lunch every day, but I might be able to pull it up on a Google Earth.
Well, there's a better picture, I think. Maybe it's that one zoomed out. You can see someone walking. It's 23 on slide or page 23. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
I think this one's
Zoom
better.
out.
There, yeah.
There we
Oh,
go.
well, probably this one.
The one with
Yeah.
the person. Well, go to the
It's
next one.
dark, yeah.
It's dark.
The previous one,
Go
I
to
think,
the
was better,
23.
Laura.
Yeah, but this one you can actually see like mathnasium. Oops.
Yeah, someone with the person looking.
I agree, they're not particularly attractive.
I think we're
So I
damned if
like
we
them
do, damned if we
back.
don't. I don't know if there's any perfect place for this.
And I don't know what the camera coverage is either. That
That-
might
that
be a
one there.
factor that we're not seeing.
Yeah, honestly, in my opinion, I think it's a disservice to have it further back to Market 32. But I think it's better to have it back as a pedestrian and as a shopping center. So I kind of like where you put it myself.
I think it might be safer also if, heaven forbid, somebody did mistakenly drive through.
Just further back, yeah.
Mhm.
That's true.
Especially with the employees sitting over glass windows, right?
Right.
No, I was thinking, I don't love the idea of a cage up against glass
Glass.
either.
No.
Mhm.
Okay. So is it fair to say we're pretty good with the location as proposed, with, give or take a few feet either way with the planning, building inspector, whoever goes over to take a look at the applicant, take a look at the application, make sure it's okay?
Yeah.
Is that?
Sorry, yeah, I'm close there, but just a clarification. The door, what does that door do? What is it? Where's it lead to? What's it used for?
With the 6 on it?
Yeah, the door to 6 on it.
It's grocery pickup. I think that's where the e-commerce pickup.
But is that door used by customers or used by personnel?
Yeah, no, it's used by customers. But it will, obviously, the major entrance is at the very center of the store.
Yeah, I
And
mean, the
where
door to
ShopRite
the
had-
left and the back, the glass doors.
Yes. You'll be able to access.
I think you're referring to the service door, right? At the end of the
Oh,
glass.
there's a service door there too.
Yeah.
There's door 6.
That goes in the hallway behind the employee break room.
As an emergency exit for those folks?
So what kind of bollards are we going to be putting there? I mean, it's not going to be bollards for cars, but it'll be for pedestrians, right?
I don't think.
Well, Clark talked to the building inspectors about this a little bit more than I did, but I think we were still considering vehicular impact because we actually
Okay,
see cars
So,
penetrate into plazas.
yeah, so that's
sometimes.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
what's behind the question I asked. So it'll still be these cylindrical bollards that we normally
Mhm.
colored yellow and red or something.
Or will it look like the ones, will it be more consistent with the ones that are along the plaza now? That you
Oh,
see?
yeah, like these
Decorative.
little black ones
The
here.
chocolate color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do decorative ones, yeah.
I think that would be better.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I agree.
I mean, one concern I would have had, but it doesn't seem to be cutting down significantly any of the pedestrian walking space because it's a fairly large, curbed sidewalk area. But yeah, I'm okay with it's there. But I mean, as you know, right? These, it's, you make a magnificent building and then you put the little doggy door at the side and wow,
Right.
it just really
It's,
it looks out of place.
Yeah.
I guess maybe that's why the previous supermarket never had one.
well, we're excited to have you all on Friday morning.
Yeah, it's 39 inches deep.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, 29 inches
29.
deep, 29 inches
Yeah.
deep. A little over 6 feet high, less than 4 foot wide. So,
Yeah, they're reasonably
Yeah.
as innocuous as something like
and
this
there's just
can
going to
be.
be one of these units. Is that
Two.
two of them? So it'll be more than.
I mean, I think from our perspective, it's just to make sure that it's secured for both pedestrians and vehicular traffic and whatever kind of marking and bollards need to be there. But I guess I do see there's a little bit of a preference having it as shown in the drawing.
Yeah.
That's why that condition says, we'll deal with it sort of with a special building permit because they didn't have time to supply a bollard plan to us, but I do think we can come through it.
Yep.
And
Are
I'm
those
fine with
bollards,
that.
are they big enough? I mean, I don't know what
Yeah.
they're made out of, but
Concrete.
Yeah, this
they're concrete.
is a CVS picture. I think you have a CVS picture a few
Okay.
Oh, yeah, in the
slides down.
packet there is, yeah.
Yeah.
That's obviously a bit different because you pull right into the parking, but it'll be all right, especially if they're decorative, the ballards.
And typically the empty tanks go into one
One comes out, one
side
goes
and
in.
the other one goes, the other just towards.
Nothing is left on the ground or it's all under lock and key.
Yeah, the CVS ones are yellow. But I think it's a good idea to have them match the ones that are there.
I
too.
agree.
Agreed.
Yep. Okay. Any concerns? I don't have any.
No.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant or discussion? If not, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Laflamme?
Aye.
Ms. Strain?
Aye.
Mr. Khan?
Aye.
Ms. Belowski?
Aye.
Mr. Darpino?
Aye.
Ms. Gold?
Aye.
Chairman Walsh?
Aye. Resolution's approved.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate it. And good luck. All right, that's it for new business. So we'll move to discussion items. Under discussion, first up is 2301 Knott Street East. That's the TD Bank, an application for.
I'm sorry,
site-
Chairman, I apologize. One question. The bus stop,
Mhm.
it's further down. It's by the main entrance, right? It's not by where these.
The bus stop is between the two main entrances. It
Right.
did get moved.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, thank you. Sorry,
Sometimes it
I
creeps
apologize,
because
Chairman.
they can
No
actually
problem.
just move the sign.
Yeah.
So it's something that we might monitor. But that's where the bus stop used to be, but
Okay.
the buses standing there was interfering with people using the intersection.
Yeah.
So we did move it back. But some bus stop's a little bit flexible, so we can monitor it.
Okay, I apologize, Chairman.
No, no
Walsh. I was
problem. Thank
just-
you.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't overlook something.
Okay, so we're on 2301 Knott Street, and this is a new application. I know we approved some signage for this applicant, I believe at our last meeting. We have representatives of the TD Bank. Would you like to come up, introduce yourself, and kind of give us an overview since it's the first time the board has seen this?
Chris Norton from RW Date Construction. So I'm the GC on the project,
Yeah, thank you.
representing the bank as well.
Could you summarize what's going to occur there, Chris?
So the exterior improvements, pretty basic. New storefront on the front there. That actually looks like a rendering of the finished product. The ephes body of the building is going to be painted a sort of light gray. All the metal roofing and the soffits are being painted dark gray. All the windows are going to be replaced as well. Any storefront or windows, they're all getting replaced. All the signage is getting replaced. That's it pretty much for the building itself. The site, we're redoing the entranceway for ADA. It's not meeting code at the moment. So we're going to be redoing the sidewalk in the front there. The landscaping on the exterior there around the entire building is going to be, what they're trying to do is less maintenance, get rid of the mulch. They want to do like a river rock, small plantings, stuff like that. Parking lot itself is just getting striped as is. As you can see the markings there. In the back corner up top by the drive-through where you exit, there's a white box up there. That's going to be a trash container with a fence around it, aluminum white fence, pretty basic. Those round white dots are arborvitaes, I believe. That's going to just hide the existing condensers that are outside. That's it. Pretty basic on the outside. We're doing the inside as well, but I know you don't need to see that.
Is the bank going to close down for all these renovations?
No, this is all happening at night.
And the lighting, is there anything happening with the lighting? Is there going to be any changes to the?
No changes with the lighting.
And as far as tree removal, I mean, it looks like some trees have gotten large there in the front to the
So the
right.
two that are closest to the road there, I believe they've taken that out of scope completely. I don't know why.
Because they're perfectly healthy trees that shouldn't be
Basically-
taken down.
I actually said that myself. I said,
Yeah.
I don't think you need to do that. They balked at the price, so.
So which ones are coming down?
The two closest to the street here are three. I guess there's three. Yep, those two and that third one up front there. The trees that will be coming down are right next to the building over by the drive-through side. They've grown like out of control, I guess. Almost, I believe they're arborvitaes, but they've gotten really big. So they want to take that whole bank of trees out of there.
And it's by the drive-through. Customers don't like the sap on their cars.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of
Okay.
trees they are exactly, but
Yes, they do.
Not too much.
So I'm sorry, Laura, could you be clear? So the ones right next to the building as you're heading towards the drive-through, those are going to be gone?
So there's, like, do you see these little-
7, yeah, right
Yeah.
there. Those.
So number 6 on the plans indicates a tree removal.
Right.
So it's indicating these 4 like columnar trees here, arborvitaes, and then these 2 perfectly healthy, beautiful trees along the multi-use path.
Right, but we're told that those
Yeah.
are those still going
So
to be
they're still
taken
on the
down?
plan as being removed, so we would need the plan updated to show that that's not going
That's
to be
fine.
removed. Yeah.
Your dumpster enclosure is solid fence?
It's a solid fence. Yep.
Thank you.
Where's that now, the enclosure? Is it the
They don't
same-
have one.
They don't have one?
No.
Over here, yeah.
Okay.
So it's
Alright.
just a small pad with a fence around it.
All right, no change in parking, no change in lighting. Those are also obviously critical. Colors seem to be neutral colors compliant with Town Center Overlay District in the fall. What did you think?
I don't think that lime green color is neutral.
Well,
That's the logo.
no, that's, the line is already there.
That's.
I know, but I
that's-
do not
that's
call that
TD.
No, I meant the
neutral.
new proposed gray and the gray roof. Right?
They are,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. All right, so what do we got for open items then? For here, basically update the drawing to show that those trees are going to stay that we'd like to keep. And basically have the Conservation Advisory Council needs to look at this, Laura.
I didn't have it for CAC. I did have it for Tree Council. The standard comments they would have are to use native species in the replanting. I'm not sure that there was a replanting plan that was submitted.
They didn't, I don't have one. They didn't give us, it was anything sort of small, nothing that's going to grow above maybe
Ye-
your knee.
So I was gonna have the Tree Council look at it on Thursday for a recommendation, but it would be helpful if there was some kind of list of what.
I know
was
they,
gonna be
in the
planted.
past, we've done numerous TDs. They've had sort of a blanket sort of, hey, pick out of these. They didn't give us anything for here, so I can possibly submit that.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yep.
We do like to keep trees, especially in a commercial area where it really helps the aesthetics a lot.
Sure.
Because the buildings aren't particularly attractive, no offense, but it's the nature of the beast.
This particular multi-use path has very little shade too.
And
these are
just
like-
affords some, yeah.
The only two,
Yeah, I
the
think
only spots that
definitely.
you can rest on this multi-use path and get shade for quite a while.
Yeah, I think definitely the trees on the multi-use path, they need to stay. I mean, look, I'm just gonna make a comment. So I got like this 0.5% concern that the reason cited for removing the trees is maintenance. Typically on site plans, we accept the removal of trees due to whatever kind of construction or, construction, building activity, excavations that needs to be done, and usually have a replanting. So I just wanted to at least voice it. I mean, I understand the argument you're making, but I'm not sure if we've ever heard a maintenance reason before.
Yeah. I think,
Not from a business. Homeowners will sometimes say, I don't want the trees anymore because I don't want to break the
Right,
leaves
right.
and stuff.
Yeah, commercially. So anyway, it's
well, for me, as long as they're doing some replanting along the, I guess it'd be the north face, the drive-through there, things that wouldn't obstruct the drive-through and like you said, lower,
Yeah, I
as
think-
long as there's some greenery that goes back in. And the
I
other
think
ones are staying.
existing
I
just
feel
got
pretty
out
good.
of control, yeah. That's what that
But
is.
sounds
well, I
like-
mean, but that's the thing. Maintenance could actually
Yeah.
bring them back into control, right? Without eliminating them. That's the it's a little bit of a quandary. It's just like I said, it doesn't sound right for a commercial bank to say that, we don't want to do maintenance of the site.
But
So we're talking,
arbor vitae can be a pain in the neck. They grow phenomenally well in this climate.
also very good bird habitat though.
Yeah, I know. My brother's got a whole row of them.
So we're talking about
And I'm
these
sick of trimming them.
that are coming up behind the roof there.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, sounds like a couple open items, update to show that the trees that are staying and get some details on what the proposal is for the ones that are being removed along the drive-through there. Get those to Laura so that they can have that discussion at the tree council, which is when, Laura?
Thursday.
Thursday. If you can do that. I mean, there's no other lighting changes or anything significant with parking or traffic flow. So, I mean, my suggestion is if you guys would like, is a call for a tentative resolution, assuming that that's all taken care of since our next meeting isn't until July 8th. And because I'm sure you want to get going because everybody's always wants to get going.
Post start date was July 15th.
Yeah, and so the
So-
8th is the next meeting, which you could get approval. You still would need to get a building permit, of course. Right? You can always start that process at any time, at least make sure you get what you need, you know?
Yeah, I'm okay with a tentative resolution, but the tree council will send us a recommendation, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Mhm.
Is anybody concerned with that?
I have one question. At the previous, when you folks were here before, we had discussions about the rear of the building and that it was fairly sparse and kind of, can I just get clarification on which elevation is actually the back? Because it looks, to me, the drive-through looks plain, but I don't know if that's the one that we discussed or if it was another elevation that we talked about. How plain the back, am I talking about the right project?
So this is the back right here.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
So,
okay, so it's not the drive-through elevation then.
well, the drive-throughs are there on the left, right?
Try to remember, do we have a side view of the Arbor Vitae?
So that would be this one, I think.
Because I thought we discussed that it was too plain and we wanted something maybe to be a little more aesthetically pleasing. I just recall it was one side. The drive-through looks like that, but if that's not the elevation we were discussing.
Wait, actually, I think it's going to be the. Okay, so oops, I keep skipping. This elevation here is the elevation of the drive-through. Here's the, like, looking directly at the drive-through from, like, standing over at Uncle Rico's. Here's the window that the cars would go up to, and here's the pillars when the cars go under the roof. And so the arborvitaes that they're talking about removing are growing along here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
Okay,
what
that
I
makes
think
sense.
what we were looking at when we were looking at the HVAC and then putting a sign on the back of the building, which they were replacing, we were looking at the top, the west elevation here.
Okay.
I think we thought maybe it was a little bare between, like, this door is where the HVAC and stuff is, but I think there actually are arborvitae out there already, or maybe he showed us a rendering, but it looked like there was going to be like some arborvitae by this door, and then this was a little blank.
If you go back to the aerial, those 4 white dots.
Yeah.
You're supposed to plant arborvitae. What's back there? The cancers.
Are they growing out to where they reach the cars?
There aren't any cars there.
No, that's
No, that's,
quite a bit
It's just
back.
grass.
Uh,
I don't think the back of that building is very visible from anywhere, though. I think it's
recall
pretty
having that
tucked in.
conversation. I
Yeah.
just wanted to be
Oh, yeah,
sure
from
which
that
elevation we were
building.
talking about.
Yeah, and I think the visibility of the building has been a concern of the owner, and that's one of the reasons the change in signage and so on and so forth, because it's tough. It's not on Balltown Road.
Yeah,
It's,
they
you know, it's
couldn't
on Up
see it,
Street
yeah.
East, and obviously there's another bank and competition, so. Okay, sounds like we're all set. Tentative resolution, get some information into the planning office so they can have the tree council discussion to support that resolution, which would be on July 8th.
Excellent. Thank
Okay.
you. Yep.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you for coming. All right, 3041 Choice Connected Road, this is Niskuna Reformed Church. We have an application for site plan review for a tenant change, the addition of Capital Kids Care, Child Care Facility. We have representatives tonight online or here?
Hi, yeah. Yep, Kyle here for Capital. Doing well, thank you.
Thanks, and it's the first time the board has seen this. We got the paperwork, but it'd be great if you could summarize what's going on for us.
Yeah, so there is already a pre-existing after school and summer camp program there. We have been in negotiations with the church since December and taking over the program and running hours out of the space. It's all the same existing spaces that the program uses, the fellowship hall, room 104, room 103, sorry. Same layout, buses will come in the main entrance, they'll loop around, kids will get dropped off, green arrow, enter the building, and then the buses will loop back around and onto Niskuna Road. We'll take between 40 and 55 kids at this location. It will be year-round. So wraparound care, the 10 weeks of summer, as well as after school from September until the end of June. And yeah, that's pretty much it. very similar to our current location over on Union Street at the Emmanuel Lutheran Church.
And that current location is going to be maintained, and this is going to be additional location, is that correct?
Yeah, it's an expansion. That's correct.
Okay. And as far as the current daycare that's there at the Niskuna Reformed Church, how much, is this more intense than that current usage over there or less intense?
No, it'll be just about the same. I actually worked in this building about 4 years ago, and the facility can hold up to 100 kids. It's a very good size. That's the amount of kids I had prior to COVID. And then, COVID changed the demographic and everything in life. But since then, it's been between 40 and 50 kids.
Okay.
And that's about what we'll see.
Okay, thank you. All right. It doesn't require a special use permit since it's already permitted there. Just a change of tenant, we call this. Intensity, is included in the packet, and the traffic flow. It's nice that it's off Niskuna Road, not, obviously pulling out from there onto the highway to have a couple options. You can go back out to Rosendale Road and then come to the light if that's easier. So that's nice. Any questions or concerns from the board at all?
Yeah, is Capital Care Kids at the Niskuna Reformed Church going to be the only childcare that's being offered there? Wasn't there a previous business there that did
The
childcare?
previous business that was there was TSL. We're taking over the space there and running our own program. Unless you're referring to the nursery school program, which is within there. There's a nursery school and preschool, but they their day ends at 12, I believe, every day.
So is the concept of busing something new for this location? No, or the TSL?
Nope, buses have still been coming there from all 5 elementary schools. They come sporadically, different times from 2:15 all the way until 2:45-ish.
Okay.
Yep.
And so TSL is no longer in business. Nursery school still is, but it's at a different.
No conflict in hours. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's correct.
So a couple questions. One is, whether this board needs to hold a public hearing. I leave it up to the board members here. And it seems like it's a pretty straightforward application, something that seems to be needed in the community, and seems like the layout is appropriate. Since there's already a daycare there, and again, I'd leave it to the board of whether we need to have another public hearing or not. I personally don't think so, but
Yeah, I don't think so either. I guess the one for fairness, right? It's hard to tell just from this application, but is there an increase in the number of children that are being
so I
served?
just
No,
asked a
you
minute
just
ago, you
said.
said it was about the same.
Yeah. My understanding is there's about 40 kids there any given day, and the enrollments we've kind of been getting were same kind of spot, 40 kids, 40 to 50.
So just to clarify, is TSL done or they conclude their contract at the end of the school year and you're just automatically sort of absorbing those kids? How's that working?
So their contract ends July 26th, I believe. They have a space until. So we're planning to launch clean September for the start of school. So we're still going through all of our New York State approvals. We're going to have our building inspector come out, fire inspector come out, sprinkler system, all that gets inspected and approved from OCFS, our governing body. So we're going through the entire licensing process now, but we'll start in September.
But the expectation is TSL will have, children there up until their contract is done, or are they closing?
They are not operating in the summer, so I think they'll be done as of June 24th, the last day for Niskuna schools.
Okay. All right. So Laura, is there anything we're missing that needs to occur besides a resolution?
I don't think so. It's sort of like grocery store moving into grocery store.
Right.
Yeah.
And OCFS sets the staffing ratios and all the other good stuff.
Yeah, there are regulators. They come out for quarterly inspections. They do, the thorough. They'll have a space. They'll come out and see it staged prior to the kids coming on their first day. They're very thorough in their background checks and everything.
And we've never received complaints that I can think of about an operation of a daycare at this facility. It's pretty set back from the road. It's a historic site. It's very large. It doesn't have neighbors directly adjacent to any of the playgrounds or anything. So as far as I can, in 8 years of being here, I've never heard any complaints.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I'm okay with not having a public hearing. I mean, I think the neighborhood is well aware that this place serves children and the care of children. So I'm okay without a public hearing.
And I think the church probably monitors the use as well, because it is historic and very important to them.
Yes, yeah. The pastor, Mike, and Ellen, the secretary, they're there every single day. We have really good communication and rapport with them over the years.
And it's a much needed service.
Oh yeah, it is.
All right. Again, tentative resolution for the July 8th meeting. Is everybody
Sounds
okay with
good.
that?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
All right, we'll have a resolution tentative for July 8th, and there's no open items that I can see, so sound good? All right,
Sounds good.
all right, we'll see you on July 8th.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
All right.
See you then.
All right. Okay, and 420 Balltown Road, this is application for site plan review for a tenant change to a community bank. That's the Taco Bell at Mohawk Commons. And representatives of the applicant, or the applicant are here, and
Hi, I'm Jeff Levy, Vice President of Property Management for DLC.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josh, and I'm a leasing agent at DLC.
thank you. You want to give us like just an overview of what's going on over there?
Well, Taco Bell is at the end of their lease. They are going to be relocating to a freestanding location. And Community Bank has expressed interest in this location. So their plan is to reuse the building as is, well, minus the kitchen equipment put in a safe. And use the existing drive-through and add a secondary drive-through lane with one of those tubular things where you put money in, not efficient for tacos, great for money, to service the customers.
Okay, and the, for the drive-through, right now, I believe there's one drive-through and you're going to add a second. How about from safety, from like a breakaway lane? Is that, is there a plan for that? Sometimes with drive-throughs, if somebody's stacked and there's a problem, like a car is on fire, they like to have like a way for that people to exit,
There's, when you see the line that's there, that is not a solid line. Those are like those metal, the rubber reflectives that can be run over easily to move around.
Laura, could you put your mouse on that for us, help us?
These?
Yes. Those are those rubber dividers, knockdown dividers. They sit on a plastic set. They're up about 4 feet. They're just to keep lanes straight, but you can drive through them or over them freely. They're really meant to be breakaway.
Yeah.
But what about the median between the perpendicular parking on the north side of the lot? Can a car go around another car that's to the drive-through on the right or the top part? Could another car go around
Pass-by lane.
to avert cars that are stacked up in the drive-through?
Is there a secondary side lane could a second car go around?
Could a third car
No,
pass? Okay.
that's distinctly going to be marked a drive-through area. And the only thing back there other than the drive-through is a dumpster. And it's going to be a relatively small one. They don't need anywhere near the size of the market. So it's like a 2 cubic.
Yeah. I mean,
And so anybody that's doing walk-in service, they don't need to access that drive-through lane to exit or ingress or egress. There's other ways in and out of the site, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's strictly going to be for drive-through.
Yeah. The only question I have, maybe it's a question for Laura or, New York State Building Code. Is there any requirements for a breakaway lane?
I'll look.
I
I
don't-
don't
you
know
know, I don't
that
know
off the
the
top of my
answer.
head. Yeah.
Because I know we've seen other applications where that question has come up and, there's like a way to get out, So if somebody again, if there's 3 cars stacked and there's, and the middle car, can't hang a right and go through because there's all parking spaces and I assume curbing there.
Yes, that's full curbing. That's the existing
Yeah.
existing print. That
Yeah.
exists today.
Yeah.
The only difference to this plan is having the secondary
Right.
drive
But
lane.
when Taco Bell had to drive through, they only had one and the cars could go around that car, if I understand it correctly.
Yes.
Yes.
So again, I don't know what the code says, if it's code compliant. We just need to understand that.
No, it meets code.
Meets code.
It's code compliant. Just 2 drive lanes, and that'll be a drive-through entrance only.
Yeah. The thing that's different here is there's nobody's going that way just to, exit the site. It's strictly the drive-through, which is a little bit different,
No one's parking that way.
Yeah.
There's nothing else
No.
going on there.
So I'd leave.
And I
that.
suspect that the volume is going to be less than Taco Bell
Yeah.
at any given time.
It's a community savings bank is who's looking at it.
Yeah, and I believe Clark did some homework here doing the parking review, and basically, it's the retail Taco Bell exceeds the requirements for the bank, Clark, right? That's what you come up with. So there shouldn't be an issue there. They required, let's see, some stacking spaces for the restaurant, and it's actually less for the bank.
Yes.
So.
So the proposal will then be to, as indicated on the colored rendering, we're going to put in some green space where some of
There
those
is existing
parking
green
spots,
space,
or
and everything gets maintained. There's no change to that. The building surfaces get redone. Kitchen equipment goes away.
so I'm sorry, what does the added mean in added green space?
So that was a suggestion from the planning department. When Chase Bank went in, Chase Bank actually took parking away and added green space.
Good.
This,
Right. I mean, that's what I understood it to be.
Yeah.
So we are going to be you are going to be adding some green space.
We hadn't planned to.
yeah, that was one of our suggestions to discuss at planning board.
Okay, so as it's intended now, where it says added green space on the top, that's going to remain parking spaces.
That was planned to remain parking spaces, yes.
And those parking spaces are actually common, or are they just for patrons? to
All
the site?
parking spaces on the property are
Common.
considered common.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't even get special parking.
I honestly prefer that at green space.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's something. So I brought it up because with Chase,
Well, especially that long piece that you're crossing 2 lanes of drive-through to get to the bank. And given how much parking is on the other side, I doubt very much that's going to get much usage.
But that, one thing I could consider, even though it may look better, that's shared parking for the whole mall site. Does it get utilized at all?
It's too far away from everything.
Yeah.
The distance to Marshall's from the end there is significant.
and it's also in our comprehensive plan to try and add green space in
Mhm.
that plaza specifically. It's when we do like sort of heat maps of the town of Niskayuna, looking at social equity and where the trees are planted and everything, this plaza constantly comes up as bright red
Yeah.
because it's so underplanted.
Yeah.
So when Chase Bank went in, they added quite a bit of extra green space, and we were like, okay, if we're getting another bank, let's look at places where we could add green space. So
right?
where
So,
it goes doesn't matter too
Yeah.
much, but like to Sarah's point, like we looked at that one block that the parking is not even necessarily connected to the bank, and there's a sidewalk there, so it would be a great place to add green space.
My preference would be to take the 4 blocks, the 3 blocks, and add a tree and some ground stuff. I think if you go into those other areas, you're going to put trees in that eventually are going to come out.
So you're saying the 3 corners, convert
Yeah.
that to green, maybe plant a tree.
Trees and some ground shrub. The problem with adding trees along that whole green run is in the winter when we're removing snow and ice and they're throwing down a ton of salt, stuff doesn't last.
yeah, we're not necessarily saying trees, right? We're
No.
saying we're saying green space.
I mean, I think the best use of are the 3 corners really when I look at that.
And
Without overly of taking too many parking spaces away from the total property.
Yeah, I mean, one thing for the applicant to consider, and I'm just bringing it up. You can look at it. So you'll be the second bank, literally within a baseball's throw distance. And I think we should try to have these, same service banks look similar. It'll benefit both banks, and it'll benefit the green space in the area.
the two banks don't consider themselves competition because one is a savings community bank and one is truly a commercial bank.
I was going to say, I think I would be okay with the 3 smaller pockets because I think the Chase ability to invest versus community bank's ability to invest those funds. I think the 3 smaller spaces is appropriate.
Moves in the right
I
direction.
think it's a good compromise personally also.
Works for us.
Beautiful. I think it'll improve the site and there'll still be plenty of parking.
So we'll
Just want to
take-
get a hamburger.
I could find that reasonable.
So we're taking, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
It's like 9.
7, 8, or 9.
Yeah.
8 or 9, I can't tell on that
Yeah.
other end one. But spaces generously, one of the 8 is generally big. So, and that's the big plan. We have a sign plan, which I sent Clark, but I just got it recently. But it basically updates the colors of the building. Community Bank wants a nice home.
What's the schedule looking like? Next meeting's July 8th. It sounds like there's some open items and some information that the board hasn't seen yet.
The only open item is signage, which can be submitted separately.
Or conditioned in the resolution if we need to, right, Laura? So if you could get in an updated site plan, to give some more details about the green space and the signage. Again, I think we're in the same position for a tentative resolution. Because that's, the next meeting's not till July 8th. And then if there's open items, we can condition the open items.
Excellent.
Yep. Sorry, just a couple of things. So your drive-through will be 24-hour drive-through?
There will be a cash dispensary and
An ATM?
ATM, too many times overseas, and a teller thing as well.
Both of those along the building.
Yes,
But 24-hour
yes,
approach,
yes,
accessibility 24 hours.
yes. With
So is something changing with your lighting plan?
the bank is adding a whole bunch of lighting under that canopy to meet that requirement.
So we'll have to look at that too, right?
That'll be on the build plan though, that the bank supplies us.
I'm still okay with a tentative resolution. I think we do need to look at the lighting plan. That
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we always look at photometric
Mhm.
data, light spillage, so on and so forth. So if it's changing drastically, that should also be included.
We'll request that from the bank.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a security aspect to it, especially
Absolutely.
decided
Yeah.
that. So the ATM will be on the side of where the drive-through
Yes.
intersects the building. I mean, is adjacent to the building.
All right, well, I mean, we'll get some more details and we'll take a look at it. We got enough time, as long as you can get it into the planning office as soon as you can.
Yeah, I need to update the siting plan, the site plan, to throw in some green space and to get the lighting plan from the bank.
Correct.
Easy things.
What
And you
about
already have the sign plan, so, and the way the outside's gonna look.
right? What about the exterior elevations will be included with that?
Yeah.
That's with the sign plan, yes.
Mhm.
It's all, I actually printed out at the hotel in black and white, but I sent the color imaging that I got around 4 o'clock today to Clark.
So we would not have seen it today.
Right.
So it's kind of funny. Google Earth is still showing the old Ruby Tuesday restaurant building, calling it Chase Bank.
Oh,
Do we know where
yeah.
the Chase Bank ATM is? Is it on the main road or?
No, actually, Chase Bank's ATM, it's off the aerial, but it's actually set very far away from the building, opposite
Oh,
the playground, the parking.
Standalone.
It has its own little.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll go back and take a look. Yeah, I'm just coming from, it's mostly the lighting and security perspective.
Absolutely. It's important.
Hey, by the way, where's Taco Bell going?
Yeah, where's Taco Bell going?
Next to CVS.
Yeah, somewhere
On
off,
State Street.
they're building a separate building. I don't know if they're building a KFC next to it too.
I don't think so.
That's their new game. is
Okay,
to
okay,
build
okay. Just
KFC
right up State Street.
And have one manager do both.
Right by
shops.
the DMV.
Yes, between DMV.
DMV and CVS. Okay, it's a good location.
They just didn't want to renew.
No. They might be moving to a
Well,
better
we're glad to
place.
see that there's a reuse plan, so, of the building.
Yeah, so not a lot of downtime between tenants, so it'll
Yeah.
work out well.
Oh, great. All right, so tentative resolution, and as always, I meant to mention for TD Bank and this Uniform Church project leads, if somebody could, step up and make, follow the project and make a motion at the next meeting, whether they're okay with it, I would be deeply appreciated. All right? Okay, I think we're all set. Project leads from the planning board here.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're all set.
Thank you.
All right.
Do you need us back here at the next meeting or?
Well, July is the meeting. It's always good to have somebody here in case any questions come up. Or you can touch base with the planning office. If you get all the information in and it seems adequate, it's your
Yeah.
decision.
Do you travel in from out of town?
Yeah, I drove from Buffalo.
I mean, you can always join
Yeah,
virtually.
you
You
can
can join
join
virtually too.
Josh came from our office in Elmsford.
Yeah,
You,
you
you,
can get online.
you do it makes sense to you, but I mean, that's why we have a virtual option.
Yeah, we just like being in person when we can.
Understood, but
We
you're here
do.
today, so it's good meeting you.
Okay, nice meeting you all.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
Thanks.
Save the greenhouse gases next time. We've met you
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. I think virtual is okay, right?
Yeah, save a tree, go online. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hey, one thing I'd like to ask the board and the planning department, with the zoning code updates might be a lengthy discussion. I believe you might be here for 1741 Union Street. Are you here for tonight? And
Yeah, let's-
Is anybody concerned if we just move them ahead in the
No, let's,
schedule?
let's,
So
let's
they don't have
definitely,
to-
let's definitely do
you
that.
know. So why don't you come on up and we'll talk about 1741 Union Street, so you don't have to listen about short-term rentals for a while. And you can, just under report, so you can kind of tell us what the plan is.
The plan is we're opening a smoothie bar, fresh pressed juices and smooth smoothies. And the situation is that our business is in Schenectady. The parking lot is in Niskayuna. Schenectady won't give us our certificate of use because they say we have to talk to you guys about the parking situation.
Okay.
And I don't know what to do. I just rented a space to try to open a business, and now I'm going through all the motions of I had to go to the planning board in Schenectady, passed everything over there. Now I'm here.
Yeah,
And
though your property is right on the line, it's in two town.
I
two
wish it was my
municipalities.
property.
Yeah.
I wish it was.
You,
I'm just
could you-
renting because I would have known.
It happens, but we get through this.
Yep. Could you give us your name?
Yeah.
for the
Jamal
record?
Lewis.
Jamal Lewis?
Yeah.
All right.
I had a quick question, Jamal. I drove by today. I think I saw the sign on the front. Are you open currently or?
No.
Okay, you're still working on getting that done.
Try.
Yeah. Is it outfitted as a kitchen and a juice bar, or do you still have to do all that
I've
outfitting?
already put the sinks in the back. I've done all the work. All the work is done.
Okay.
The health department passed it. Everything's done except this situation.
So is it replacing Pizza Buona or is it next to
No,
it?
it's not.
At the other end.
It's different.
I believe it's a tattoo parlor.
It's on Union
It used to
Street.
be a tattoo parlor, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So the kitchen's done. And the parking. So do you expect there to be patrons sitting and dining and parked in the Niskayuna parking spaces?
No, what I expect is I have seating for people that's going to wait for their orders, but it's not a dine-in
Mhm.
place. It's
Come and go, in and out.
yeah, like people will have to wait 10, however long it takes for the order to be completed. But outside of that, it's not a dine-in type of place.
Got it. Okay.
And Laura, do we have any information of the number of parking spots that are part of this application or?
Yeah, I mean, we can put all this in the agenda statement, but it's a pre-existing non-conforming building, so it's underparked. So there's we need a full site plan still, but we think there's about 13 to 15 parking spaces. The building itself would trigger about 30. And so a retail service store would be grandfathered in and we wouldn't even have to do the parking calculations, but changing it to a restaurant will require a new special use permit.
Really? So it's got to go to the town board?
Town board as well.
What percentage of the building is in this unit? Is it a large percentage or?
Yeah, it's the majority of the building is in the town of Niskayuna. I think it's probably even more than 65% of the building is in Niskayuna.
And that's why Schenectady's sending it over our way, huh?
Well, we would always be looking at it. Like Clark and I can put it in the agenda packet for you guys at the next meeting. But the town has, even in the 80s, taken the lead on approvals on this building and has some good guidance from former town attorneys on because of the pre-existing non-conforming status. I think it actually was looked at for a restaurant in the 90s. And Yeah, because of the impact of the parking, they withdrew the special use permit request and it went back to what's allowed under the pre-existing non-conforming, which is retail.
Retail.
We can put all of that in the agenda statement. Probably don't need to get in a whole lot of details, but we wanted you to meet
Yeah.
the people and you guys can drive by and take a look at the site and then we can.
But if you talk to so the problem is that because of the change of use from retail to restaurant, if Laura states we need a new special use permit, that's a process. And if you're in a hurry to get open,
I mean, I've been closed for a year.
yeah, because
And
we got to review
I'm
it.
paying rent. I left my job. Like, I have 2 kids, and I'm just trying to get my business open, and I am not the landlord. Nobody told me about this before I gave him my money.
Yeah, I understand.
That I would be dealing with all of this. At my wit's end, I don't know what else to do here.
Yeah.
And then I have to go through another process. I went through the whole process with Schenectady.
Right.
Now I have to go through another process and wait possibly, I don't know how long.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking probably a couple months at least.
And
Even if we compress it, it's a pretty long process.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to have to tell you that,
The entrance to this store is off of Union Street.
Yes, this door faces
The
Union.
entrance is coming off of Union, right? You
Mhm.
said where the tattoo parlor used to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And under our code, it's a takeout restaurant.
Couple things we've offered. Clark's going to put together a schedule of how the meetings can fit for you, so you can plan for that. And another thing is, it does seem like the city of Schenectady, there's a disconnect there. So I think it'd be really helpful for you guys.
between who?
The city of Schenectady and you and the landlord and the town of Niskayuna, we can all get together, meet upstairs in the Schaefer room, make sure that everybody's on the same page, make sure we all know what the approvals are that we have to go through. We can meet with you guys as soon as Thursday or Friday. So just take a look at your schedules and let us know.
I'm free. I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just talk about that schedule a little bit. So assume that on July 8th, we finish the planning board part of this, then that's a recommendation to the town board.
Yeah, well, you have, because it's a special use permit, you have to call a mandatory public hearing.
Right, you got to call the,
Yeah.
right, yeah, so,
So the most you could do at the next meeting is after you review it, if it looks good, you can call for the public hearing.
Yeah, and then the public hearing would be
End of
Wouldn't be-
July.
There's no way to move that up.
end of July. Yep.
Not,
Call for the public
no.
hearing, so could they be
So we feel fair. We're trying to
No.
do what we can, but it sounds, we've had this happen just recently on
so
another
why can't the
application.
why can't the public hearing be in the 8th
We only
also?
have one meeting this month, I think is the bottom line.
Yeah.
Question: why can't I have off the street parking?
Everybody uses the off-street parking, but our zoning code requires on-street parking. Everybody can use the on-street parking. Our code requires off-street parking
For the parking lot,
for the building.
for the building.
Yeah.
So again, like, I may have it wrong, but if the parking lot is the only thing that Niskayuna is responsible for, why can't I just open my business that's in Schenectady and use off-street parking?
So it's not the parking lot. Niskayuna actually has the majority of that building.
Yeah.
You're just one tenant in that building, and actually the entire parking lot is in Niskayuna. But that's why I think it'd be really good to have the meeting with you guys, the city of Schenectady, here in the city of Schenectady. You can be flexible so that we're all talking about the same thing, because Niskayuna takes the lead on this building usually.
Yeah, but the thing is, regardless of what the city of Schenectady does, it still is constrained by the timeline of Niskayuna's process.
Correct. Yep.
And we can have another meeting this month because it would be graduation night.
No, I have looked multiple times to try and get a second meeting in this month. The problem is the boardroom is closed for early voting, and
Yes.
I can't get
Oh, my
one
God, sorry.
scheduled without getting it back to back to another one. It will only change it by like 7 days, and then it messes up the rest of the meetings. I looked at multiple times because we
Okay.
even had a commercial interest on Hillside Commerce Park, and I sat there and tried to figure out even if we could have a planning board meeting on a Wednesday. It just does not work in June.
I forgot about the farmer.
Yeah.
Does the town board need to have a public hearing also?
the town board also needs to call the public hearing. So like the shortest amount of time that we've ever gotten a special use form, because we do push them
Yeah.
fairly quickly for daycares, controversial issue. It's 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah, this is 3 months.
If we really.
So,
get it.
I mean, we're not going to give you advice here, but it seems there was a big miscommunication with the landlord. So
With
if
me and
you,
him.
if you had no idea that,
No,
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Landlord
say,
should know by now.
yeah,
I mean, he recently had acquired the building around the time that we signed the lease
Oh, maybe
last
he didn't
March.
know.
Maybe you didn't know.
I've had this lease since March of 23. And again, my store has yet to be open.
and all this time you were spent dealing with Schenectady.
All this time I've been dealing with Schenectady. I spoke to Ms. Comuna before about the parking, and to my knowledge, the business that it wasn't falling into the criteria for using. That's why I changed the business. I thought that it would be considered retail, but now it's considered a restaurant. And like I said, I've dumped all my money into this place, all of it. And I don't know what to do next. I don't know what to do next. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And
So we've seen
My
this,
lease is
we've seen
almost
this
up.
happen. We've seen this happen before. I mean, I have an expectation from experience, and other board members, Laura can correct me, that this will come to a favorable end. The point is, though, it is going to be a 3-month process. Right? I think I'm not.
Yeah, and I mean, I would suggest just to make sure that it is a 3-month process and there aren't any more. It just we really got to get that meeting scheduled, and we'll get that schedule set up for you so you know what your timelines are, you know what your deadlines are, and you know what your process is. A 3-month is like the bare minimum, and it's pretty hard to meet unless you're really prepared. So that's why you need to meet with us and make sure that we know what the deadlines are and we know what your steps are, and we're all on the same page there.
Yeah, I mean, especially if Schenectady has to give an approval, and if they're sending you to us, we'd like to be able to get their approval also at the same time or
I
sooner.
mean,
Yeah.
I believe everything in Schenectady was approved except the certificate of use.
Yeah, but that meeting that Laura's talking about, the town planner, I think it's important to have it. One, I mean, like I said, I think this will get to a place that's favorable for you and your business. It is just going to take that process time. So the only thing we really can do is just make sure that everything's in place and we're just hitting one deadline after the other.
Again, first
Yeah.
we've seen this, as you know, on this board, so.
We do have a second meeting in July, I hope.
Yeah, we have, yep, after this, we have
So-
regular 2 meetings a month for the rest of the year, I think until like November.
And so there's absolutely no way we can also call for a public hearing on July 8th.
I don't think, because the application did not come in time to be on this meeting, I would not recommend, you've got to have the formal application.
Yep, okay, got it.
The public-
So
No, for the 8th, you said,
in
not this
scenario,
meeting.
we can call.
Yeah, no, the 8th.
Public hearing on the
saying this
8th.
Yeah,
or
hold it
the
at the end of
22nd
July.
or whatever it is. And maybe we could have a tentative resolution.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that would get it to the next stage with the town board.
Yeah, but I mean, and I completely understand wanting to make sure that we've got a good timeline, but the parking is an issue that we
Mhm.
do need to come through too. So that's why I think it's really good to have the internal meetings, maybe grab a project lead, get everybody in the same room, because push the special use permit, like I think the main part is going to be that it still may be a higher draw demand as a takeout restaurant by our code for parking. So if there's solutions where we can find some additional off-street parking somewhere, that would be helpful too.
Yeah, Pizza Bueno, is that what it was? They actually had spots across the street, the gas station, they had signage, and they were utilizing, because they had the same issue.
Well, and one of the things that the landlord, I believe, has said to these guys is you can use spaces from the Rosada Mart, but you can't. The Rosada Mart, when we reviewed it, was underparked. We actually had them bank a parking space that they're not parking, so they don't have the ability to lend
Yeah.
any more parking
Yeah, I'm
spaces.
just saying that's what happened.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
but like, it would be good if we could find an adjacent business that has additional.
Right, so the adjacent business is Stewart's, and the business is adjacent to Stewart's, right? The-
On street. yeah.
And Stewart's often doesn't have much available.
Yeah.
either. I think you might have some actual foot traffic where people aren't bringing their cars to your site. But I don't know how much that'll be.
What happened to that building across the street, Laura?
We
Where-
what?
The building right across the street where, I'm sorry, I have the,
Yeah,
They tore it
it's-
down.
It's a bank now.
No, not the bank. The one that was next to the bank.
Well, that's empty.
Gone.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
take
it's
that building
totally
down.
down?
They took
brick
that building
building?
down.
Yeah, right.
That's gone.
And so,
Didn't even know that. Oh.
I mean, yeah, Google still thinks it's there.
Mhm.
Google still thinks it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we've been going back and forth with the people who took that building down because welcome to Niskayuna. We may need parking, but you actually can't have parking as your primary principal use in the
Yeah.
CN zone. So they can't take that building down and then just pave over it.
Right. That's why I asked, because I
Yeah.
remember that the thought there was,
They get the necessary permission.
All right, so the bottom line is, if you're
But
available,
I'm gonna make them.
maybe you can call
topsoil.
tomorrow and call Clark. You have the phone number to the office and set that meeting and try to get in here this week.
yeah, so look, I want to modify an expectation that I set, right? So the parking is going to be a challenge. And looking at this, I don't see a good solution.
Yeah, it's definitely something we need to come through. and
All right.
figure
Yeah, but I'm not sure how we'll come through it, right? Rosada is off limits. And
There's no on-street parking.
there's no on-street
in
parking.
Antwerp or Union, that area.
How many spaces does he need?
I mean, that's why I don't want to talk
Okay.
about it
Yeah,
too
'cause
much under reports. But I mean, we did a preliminary parking of. You guys actually saw this when he was proposing for it to be an event center,
Right.
and that had an even higher parking demand. So it's better to go to the juice bar for sure. But like our calculations on that initial outreach were that we think there's 13 to 15 park off street, and that the building in and of itself demands 30. So then you have to figure out, what the demand would be with the addition of a takeout restaurant.
So I'm asking, like, what, as far as my landlord goes, like, if these are things that he knew, like he bought the property, he should know this before he rents it to someone and signs a lease with someone. Like
And so I actually
being-
talked to the landlord today, and
I know.
Yeah, and he's very amenable to coming and meeting with all of us all in one room, so we can get all of that out on the
Yeah,
table.
because like I don't feel like I've done anything wrong. Like I'm being penalized and I've done nothing
Yeah,
wrong.
It's communication and process, right? Not knowing what the process is and not being told what it would be, the details.
Kind of falls on somebody else,
Yeah.
not me.
But we still, we still have rules and regulations that
Of
we have to
course.
follow, so we're kind of caught too, right? We just can't say we feel sorry and, we feel bad. I mean, I feel bad, but get the meeting set up and come on in and get together a schedule and we'll know where you stand and know what steps need to be taken and, so you can bring this to closure.
Yeah, I think for the planning board, we have to figure out what the correct solution is there for parking.
That'll be part of the discussion.
So to help expedite this process, I would volunteer to be the project lead on this. I did a couple projects in that area, so I'm really familiar with it.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you,
And
David.
if you wanted to
Because
set
I'm
up a meeting as early as this Friday morning, I could make that work.
I would love to. Anything that can be done, I would love to try to get something done.
Yeah, Friday morning I know works for me. So if I can reach out to the city of Schenectady and try and coordinate with everyone, if you think Friday morning would work for you guys.
Friday morning's fine with me.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, no, thank you. Thank you for coming and we'll, hang in there.
We don't have any parking waiving options here, right?
I will look into
Okay,
that.
okay.
Yeah, we haven't checked that, whether or not planning board can waive or it would have to go to the zoning board, because that would obviously impact the schedule as well.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, and thanks everybody for allowing, have that discussion. And we'll get back to the regular agenda. And next up is zoning code amendments for short-term rental regulations. And as you all know, Laura put out a document and some board members have responded with some comments and appreciate people taking a look at that. And from that, I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Khan and Ms. Strang, the project leads.
Thank you, Chair Walsh. And I just had one
Yes.
thing, if you don't mind, if I
No,
can share one thing
absolutely.
first. Yeah, so I think it's really good that we actually had that zoom in to what draft code could look like.
Mhm.
And I think there's still quite a few things left to discuss. But I guess I'm coming back to a more higher level question, right? If we wanted to be restrictive about where short-term rentals as defined can occur, what's our legal boundaries there? And so, Elaine, I'm glad to see you here, although, Bob was,
Yeah, Rob and I actually had a discussion on this last week because he had sent me some of the questions. And I don't know to what extent he's already stated this, so you might be hearing it just a second time from me, but, you know, we've had things in the past, more commercial oriented, but if it's legal for something that it's not illegal, you know, it's not like, we're not selling something illegal, then we can't just outright ban it. And then, you know, Rob and I had the discussion as far as, you know, if we put it into, if we say only short-term rentals can go into commercial property, then is that essentially a ban without calling it a ban? So, you know, we were both from that discussion, I think, on the same page as far as we can certainly restrict it, but we can't restrict it to such a degree that it would otherwise be a ban without calling it a ban. Does that make sense?
Was it discussed to the detail of hosted versus non-hosted? Meaning, we're allowing it in both, but we're allowing the non-hosted in the commercial and the hosted in residential. Was that a ban?
I mean, that we didn't have that exact question wasn't posed, but I mean, I don't see any issues with having restrictions on like more restrictions on an unhosted residence versus a hosted residence. But again, it goes back to if you say unhosted can only be in a commercial district, well, how many houses are actually in a commercial district? I don't know the answer to that, so I don't know what that looks like as far as, you know, will that pass legal muster if it were ever to go to court? What? So I think, you know, the question needs to be, if we're looking to restrict more on the unhosted, where are there residential homes? And maybe that is in commercial, or maybe it's in a mixed use or something like that. I think the question needs to be where, or the direction kind of needs to be is where would it be allowed where there's actual properties that exist but not be an outright ban if it were to, without calling it a ban. Am I making sense?
I understand all the words, and I think I understand the context, right? But I think I'm concluding here that we're going to have a trial and error step that we're going to make. We're going to do something, and we're going to have to see what happens.
I mean, I would prefer we not do that, but of course, anytime you do something new, that could certainly.
There was one question I had, an additional question came in today from what Laura sent. Someone had sent out this Microsoft PowerPoint.
Oh yeah, that came from Loris Gordino. I had not seen it before,
Yeah,
but it did have points in there that I had not seen before. So
yeah, like I was looking. So we don't need to, Elaine. I don't know if you've seen it or not, and I don't want to take you by surprise. Yeah, if you do get a chance, it's on slide 4. Right, there was a comment there that says primary versus non-primary residents. I don't know if you want to bring it up, Laura, or not. I mean, I know this is getting you cold, so you don't have to deal with it now. I was just introducing it.
You know, one of the problems, obviously, getting that today, you know, didn't meet the deadline, and
Yeah.
people working or not working didn't have,
Yeah, I
probably didn't
managed
have an
to
opportunity
literally
to take a
managed
look
to
at that,
squeeze
like
in
that
looking at it,
information.
but
yeah.
but it just raises another question. There was a comment there where something was deemed to be unconstitutional, and I just wanted to know what the basis of that was.
yeah, I don't know any of those bases. It's from. I mean, it says it's from the Department of State. So I want to look at it more. I was actually
Okay.
discussing it with Leslie today, and she wanted to see it before the meeting. So I figured I would send it to everyone. And I know we're trying not to do that too much, but it's just a new piece of information that we can use to look at things.
So given what Elena said, and I think as a board we need to come up with hosted versus unhosted. Where are we actually going to think that this makes sense in this scheme?
So that's my question. I looked at some of the other municipality rules that you shared. Is the sort of zoning the only means by which entities are determining yes or no? Like, I wonder, I think about, you know, the places I've rented, right? And so what if you have a property that people have used, you know, for Union Homecoming weekend for 20 years, they've rented it and it doesn't really impact people, but because of where it's located, it suddenly gets banned. I guess, density of population is really the issue here to me, right? We don't want people next door to us renting out to 24 people,
I don't
at any
think,
given
I don't think
time.
you're going to avoid that completely. I think wherever there's a rule, it's going to be broken. And I think you're going to find people doing this anyway, even after we get this all settled
Mhm.
and it's all codified and wherever we are with it, whatever we've decided, you're going to find people who are just going to break the rule. And it's just going to be a matter of how it
Enforcement.
gets enforced or how we stop at least that one particular case. I just don't think we're going to find I don't think there's a safety net that is going to encompass everything. I see what you're saying though, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean-
Limit the number of people, and I think allowing up to like 24 is way too many.
Yeah, I definitely think we should look at the formulas.
Yeah, I mean, but the key point that was summarized, right? The enforcement of whether it's a primary residence for the owner, the number of people, right? Those, it'll be highly unenforceable.
So I think the primary residence for the owner during the permitting process would be a relatively easy thing to determine because we wouldn't issue a license unless they could prove to us that was their primary residence. And I talked to the assessor for a long time about how to determine what is someone's primary residence. I honestly thought it was going to be a little bit easier than it actually is because I thought they kind of would have to check a box that this is their primary residence for the town assessment rules or something. They do not. No, but there is a variety of things you can check on whether or not they get certain tax credits on where tax bills go to, their license, there's a number of ways to see
If it remains or at that
voting.
static
I mean,
moment.
actually in here, it talks about providing a license and your voter's registration.
Okay.
So, I mean, you've got to prove to some higher entity where your primary residence is, and then we can use that entity's proof, for us. So I think that information could be provided during the licensing initially and could probably even be required for the annual renewals as well. So the making sure that it's a primary residence seems like a smaller hurdle. The actual enforcement of how many people are in the house at any given time, that is a heavier lift, especially because it's very likely that if a complaint comes in of too many people in the house, it's going to be after regular building inspector hours. So if we create a code that we're fairly comfortable with can be enforced, it's a discussion that I would have to have with the town board. We adopt this code, it would likely trigger either a discussion with the police if we're going to have them be partial enforcement, but they do not like messing with the zoning code at all, or whether we would need to budget for additional overtime for the building inspectors and have we have a way for the non-emergency 911 number to call them out. But the expectation would probably be the enforcement of this code is very likely going to be outside of regular building inspector hours. And the very first slideshow that I sent you said, beware, this is a heavy lift for code enforcement officers. So we know that.
And I don't think you can just ban them from having parties at the home they're renting because the homeowners can have a party. You can't say anything about that. You can put limits on the size maybe, but you can't tell them they can't have a few people in.
Yeah, the way the code is written now, which is a point that we can definitely discuss, is it has a formula for how many people can be there. And then it does allow for, I think, double the number of people to be there up to 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. And so essentially they're allowed to have guests. That is the way that this code is written, taken from North Alba. I didn't change that out. So the percentage is going to matter if we're looking at total number of peoples.
And then there's the parking restrictions, but unfortunately, they could park off-site and either Uber in, have people, pick them up. So that there's no guarantee with the parking, the occupancy. You can't control the occupancy with the parking.
I mean, when I keep looking at this code, I also look at it in terms of enforcement. And I know, so you had mentioned that on Long Island, they require things to be hosted and they're still struggling with them not actually being hosted. But the reason I zoomed in right here is that this definition of hosted short-term rental states that it's only considered hosted when the owner stays overnight during the entire term of each short-term rental on the property. So I heard the concern that the owner should reside 184 days of the year, but this definition of hosted requires the owner to be on the site while it's being hosted. So also incredibly difficult to enforce. But I think that's trying to get around the I'm going to live here for 184 days and then the other 184 days I'm going to rent it. That's not the intent of hosted. The intent of hosted is that there's a human being that lives in the house as their regular home and they would be renting a portion of their home to someone else. And I think the reason for the distinction is that you're not going to invite 24 people to the house where the person is living to have a party while they are there. That's, I think, the intent, that the hosted is going to discourage that type of behavior. Sui did mention that Long Island struggles with the hosted versus unhosted, but I mean, it is a different. Long Island is more of a seasonal community, I think, than we are. We're bedroom. So the only reason I feel a little more comfortable is when you go on there on a good day, you're lucky to see 10 listings on Airbnb for Niskayuna. So although I do think it could be a heavy lift, my building inspectors, as far as right now, are not going to 30 different.
Yeah, but we have to
places.
plan for, for any future, right?
Right.
I mean, and that's the thing, right? The summary of all of the recent discussion here, it'll be virtually impossible to enforce. It'll be,
I mean, I don't want to adopt a code that's virtually impossible to enforce.
Well,
You
hold
got to
on.
figure it out.
Right.
We can't
Yeah.
proactively enforce it, but we can reactively have a code to fall back on.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, there's, basically almost
yeah,
nothing.
so we're
we
going to
can
have
do, but-
neighbors calling out neighbors.
Right. So like
We're
in
gonna-
Sarah's example, if there's a really ideal location that's been traditionally used for non-Airbnb, pre-Airbnb, branded use, and everyone knows about it, and therefore people don't complain about it, and it doesn't quite fit, but they don't get any complaints because it's a good location, then we're probably going to be okay with it, right? That's what it sounds like. We're going to enforce based on complaints, or noise ordinances, parking violations, those types of things. So it's really a code that allows us to enforce reactively.
That's
Right?
correct, right? So if we got a call, like on Milton Keys, for example, and there was multiple complaints and we go there and we can tell that it's the host, then you have that, well, you got to show us that you're staying here with them. Yeah, I mean, there is some balance with, if people read a law, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do it, but it does give us the power to enforce, and it does give us these triggers.
Right.
And if it's pretty clear that somebody lives in Florida and they have no ability to show up to our building the next day to prove that this is the home that they're living in, there's definitely important things to put in there that would help.
Yeah.
us
So,
with it.
so I think for me, zooming back out, I guess when I think about approaching this to find out what a reasonable code could be, if we take the definition of short-term rental as is, forget about hosted or unhosted, I'm thinking we should go through an exercise to map onto our comprehensive plan where that would be suitable with the comprehensive plan and where it would not.
So actually, that is a huge recommendation from
Yeah.
Department of State in New
Yeah.
York in all places.
So
To
so
try
I
and
think,
have
yeah.
the why in your comprehensive
Yeah,
plan.
so I think that's our next exercise. That's what my recommendation would be, is to, our comprehensive plan goes kind of zone by zone, area by area. I'm looking at you, Dave, because you're one of the authors, right?
It was.
Zone by zone, area by area. And I think we need to maybe have a little 2-column checklist that says, forget about hosted or unhosted, just short-term rental, less than 30 days. Maybe we could have, fine, maybe we could have hosted or unhosted.
Yeah.
And just put a check mark or a X mark next to each one.
Yeah, I definitely actually think you shouldn't forget about hosted versus unhosted.
Yeah, no,
Because
so
the more you learn, the more I think that it's okay to classify
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
unhosted.
Yeah,
Unhosted.
Unhosted, I think it should be umbrellaed under each. But I would also, and to jump to another area, in reading what you sent, Laura, and making edits that I thought were appropriate, I think it's also important to keep in mind that we're only allowing folks a certain amount of time to have a permit. And then after that time, they have to wait before they get another permit. So if this is going to be, if we enact this, if we do that, then someone's going to look at this and not look at it as such a business venture because it's going to end up being a pain in the parts.
Yeah,
You know
no,
what I mean?
I heard Amna offer that comment, and I did see that you had a comment about the 18 months, but I believe that that's only triggered if the ownership changes.
yeah.
So you're able to renew year to year, but if the ownership changes, there's a waiting period of 18 months.
So you can't enforce a 18 on and 18 off. You have to.
We could
I-
come up with something like that. We've discussed that, but we haven't come to that conclusion.
I haven't seen that in other towns' codes. The waiting period between owners was in the North Elba code. I haven't seen a code that it's a year on and a year off. I haven't seen that.
It would seem to me that that's more discouraging for someone to have to wait. They put all the time and effort into establishing, a location wherever it's going to be within the town. And then all this, by the time they do all of that, now they've only got a certain amount of time to rent it, and then they have to give up that permit. I think we should be able to do that.
So each code regulation that we adopt, though, needs to be tied to a specific zoning purpose. And I think what would the purpose of saying you can only rent it for a year and then you can't and then you
can't,
can
yeah.
again? You want to make sure that your regulations aren't arbitrary and capricious either. So you just got to be careful with something like that. The trigger in the code is a change in ownership. And even in my brain, I'm not exactly sure why there's a waiting period between ownerships, but that was written into the North Elba code.
So you're saying
I
that
don't
the
know why
North
we're
Elba,
doing 18 months rather than a year.
Well, I think it was a year, and then we were looking at the 18-month instead. But yeah,
but Laura, I just want to clarify. Are you saying that because we see it in North Elba, it is more defensible?
so North Elba's code has been litigated and
Litigated?
adjusted for litigation,
In that
which is
aspect?
why one of the reasons why CDRPC recommends it. But
And they're saying that when there's a change of ownership, you cannot Airbnb it for the first 18 months.
I think it's actually a year. Nancy's comments were like, maybe we should switch everything to 18 months. So that's in
That
the
was me.
recommendations.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And
So again, like I said, the detailed discussions, I think we kind of know a lot of parameters there, right? If we were to go evaluate our comprehensive plan relative to short-term rental, so I'm seeing that the criteria is hosted versus unhosted. I think that needs to be a criteria we assess. What would another criteria be?
Well-
So I'm envisioning we sit down either
primary residence?
maybe me and Nancy, I'm not volunteering. Me and Nancy, maybe off the side, we take the comprehensive plan. Maybe if someone else is interested, we can go through and we can just structure each section and say, suitable, unsuitable, where the comprehensive plan is concerned.
I think that's a great idea. I just
But-
want to
but-
make sure that we're clarifying that we actually, our timeframes don't line up very well. So I think that we should frame it within our existing comprehensive plan and put it in the update, but the update isn't really scheduled for 2025.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the existing comprehensive plan.
Yeah, so we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
review it
yeah.
in the context of the existing comprehensive plan, which I highly recommend. We should definitely do that. And then I think those recommendations should be incorporated in the 2025 plan. But we would actually be talking about adopting this code prior to any updates to
Yeah.
the comprehensive plan.
So I think the key things we need to do is we need to figure out what criteria are we going to be, with the context of which criteria are we going to be looking at. The only ones right now I can think of is hosted versus unhosted, with the definition that you highlighted, Laura.
Yeah, I do.
Right.
Because I mean, we were.
It's not
struggling-
living there, it's being there.
It's being there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's important.
Excuse me.
I guess I want to jump in. I don't think the enforcement issue is going to be as heavy lift as you think it is, only because the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a noise violation, right? Police are going to show up. They're going to find out that it is a rental or it might be listed. That information is going to get back to the building department. At some point, we'll just take this hypothetically, it's a Friday night. So the building department is either could go there on overtime, send a code enforcement inspector out, which probably at 1:30 in the morning isn't going to get much accomplished. But again, if they're out there first thing Monday, when they're open, after X amount of violations, I think we build that into, as far as the enforcement, if you
Lose your
incur 3 within a 12-month time period.
That's in the code.
Yeah, right. But that's where the enforcement is going to step up. And at least with a lot of people that are renting, or people that travel, a lot of these are under the radar. We have a couple outliers that you deal with, but that's where that enforcement is going to snuff out an occasional problem that is in a neighborhood.
Yeah, and that's why you need the code, because right
Right.
now we can't,
Correct.
we don't have a lot of leverage. But I mean, I already feel like even though there are things that we need to work out, I think this code would give us plenty of leverage to address some of the issues that we've been hearing about.
So David, I heard you, and same thing with Chris. Look, the statement I'm going to say is going to sound naive, but I know how Niskayuna operates, right? We talk to the police, et cetera, right? Having us be a complaint-based town is just not moving in the right direction, right? It just doesn't promote neighborliness. It doesn't promote the goals and objectives of quality of life of people, et cetera, right? So yeah, I know we can, at the end of the day, enforce anything, but my question where that's concerned is, should we put ourselves in a position to actually, have neighbors be on the lookout for each other in terms of, making a complaint, who's doing this, who's doing that, and creating further communal animosity, right? I know it sounds naive, but nonetheless, we live in a world where, right, the easiest thing to happen is animosity.
Then how do we avoid that?
Right. So I mean, my thing is like, I want to first think about where would we need to avoid it.
Well, I want to go back to the why. So what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, the why we are putting this into our code is because we feel there's litigation against us for limiting its use in our community. That's the first why that I'm hearing.
No, the why is because we are trying to protect the fabric of our
Yeah,
neighborhood
quality of life. is,
against
yeah.
negative impacts from short-term rentals.
So we were putting code in so that we can maintain the quality of life as a bedroom community. And then the next thing would be, would the next why be that we want to protect that residential bedroom community by limiting the propagation of Airbnb or short-term rentals without restricting every resident the option to be able to use that vehicle if and when they need to.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I'm not
So-
sure about the second half.
No one has to answer it, but my
Yeah,
point is,
yeah.
I want to go back to the why, because I think we need to define that. And I know that the mention was a comprehensive plan. Where does it fit in our community? But I've heard Laura say point blank, we really shouldn't say it can be done here, but not done there. Right? Different zones shouldn't be
So
having
I
an
don't wanna
advantage or a
make huge
disadvantage.
distinction between an R1, an R2, and an R3, because those are primarily residential zones. And what I don't want this town to do is say R3 zones aren't as good as R1, so let's put it
Yeah.
there.
So you're okay
We're
with
not having that
Agree,
conversation.
agree. So just to clarify, in the comprehensive plan review and the different neighborhoods that we have, you're okay with distinguishing neighborhoods we'd be more willing to or less willing to, as long as it's not by class of R1, R2, R3.
So I think it's always very important to ground your code in your comprehensive plan
Mhm.
and look at the recommendations there and see what fits. But I don't think that we need to be making distinctions between primary residential zones. One thing I do want to say is that one recommendation that came from this board is, why don't we restrict it to RP and CN?
Mhm.
I think we have a total of 2 homes in both
Yes,
of those.
I get
So
that point.
that didn't work quite as well as we thought.
A few more than 2.
I don't,
But not much?
I don't think so.
So Laura, I'm going to ask my naive question, which is are we getting guidance that there's no communities who've just, in New York State, that have just banned it blanket?
Very few municipalities have tried to go and ban it. I think Dallas is one, Dallas, Texas is one. They're looking for outright bans. And until a municipality can win or take that, you'll probably see that publicized if it would happen.
Has
but I
not
think-
occurred yet. Because
No,
I mean,
when they do
that,
occur,
that
they get
host,
litigated.
Right.
Right.
It'll end up, right.
Most likely we did.
I mean, the hosted thing is what New York City did. Theirs
Right.
is so restrictive because they make sure you have to have the person on the property, and who wants to rent a tiny apartment when the
Well,
person's already in there, right?
Yeah.
The problem in New York City is that it's like impossible to
Enforce.
actually enforce it.
I mean, and so to your, I mean, I think there are rules around where and size and number of people to limit 24 people with 6 or 8 cars or 12 cars, right, showing up. But when you read the constituent concerns, my concern is, you know, the noise and the partying is one thing. A significant concern, I think, is not knowing who's coming and going in a neighborhood, which at that point, you could be following all the rules,
It's still
but
just-
those families are still feeling
Exactly.
like there's a different car in that driveway every 3 days or every
Yeah.
weekend.
Well, we can fix a lot of things with good codes, but I mean, there's some things that our balance in the world is it's changing. We can make a significant impact to our town by adopting a reasonably balanced code that allows for us to enforce nuisance properties and, you know, helps guide, you know, good zoning practice. Like if you go to zoning trainings and everything, I think the general consensus is now is the time to make sure that you've got the code in here to handle short-term rentals, and we've got a lot of good
Yeah.
guidance. But I mean, at the end of the day, there may still, I mean, your neighbor could invite 10 people over and you're not going to know who those 10 people are. I mean,
Exactly.
there's a balance that has to be reached, and it, you know,
All right. And if we keep talking, you know, about being reactive, you know, enforcing problems, but remember, we don't have a code now. And,
Nothing.
you know, so
Yeah.
if we have something
Nothing.
and there's certain steps that an applicant has to follow, and that may change their decision on whether they want to get into the short-term rental thing because, hey, may need to live there. I need to, you know, have inspections, septic, fireplace, so on. So maybe you say, hey, just isn't worth it. But right now, we don't have that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe a good example is the chickens, the chicken code that we adopted. So before that, we had no code, and when we adopted it, I think we got 6 or 7 permits of the people who like wanted to comply. And so you may get that when this goes in. They'll be like, okay, well, we know you're talking about me. Like, here's my application. But after that, it typically is somebody calls and says, I have chickens in my yard, and and then we go out, oh, you don't have your permit. Okay, you can't have roosters. You can only have 6. You've got to pare it down. You've got to limit your impacts, and that's actually worked reasonably well.
Can you remind me, Laura, on that code that we wrote, was it also required that the immediate neighbors had to be in support?
No.
Nothing. We
Yeah.
talked about that, but that's not in the code.
No, but
Yeah, so-
I'm starting to blur some of the codes that I've looked together versus this one, but I
Okay.
think that if it's not in this one, and I'm sorry, I could look really fast, but one of the codes I read had the initial contact, like you do actually list the owners of the Airbnb contact for the neighbors, and the neighbors, the first point of contact is the neighbor's call. The second point of contact is the neighbor's call the town. So, I mean, I think there is, if it's not in here, we can put it in. I've seen it in multiple ones
That's a good one.
that, you maintain that registry, that it's open and available to everyone. And, there are those numbers for the people who are supposed to be there. If it's hosted, they're supposed to be there. And then you can call them and say there's a problem and they're supposed to address it like immediately. And if they do, I think it doesn't be necessarily a strike on their record if they address it immediately. If they don't, then they get a strike. And then I think they're only allowed 1 strike before they can get there, before the license gets revoked.
Yeah, and Laura, I mean, obviously, I understand the similarity between code to code, chickens versus, but this is very different.
Oh, no,
And-
100%.
and
I'm
yeah.
just saying, when you enact it, you get like an initial bump of registrations, and then it does become complaint-based, but it does give you that ability to regulate the
Yeah.
nuisance elements of whatever is happening.
I mean, a lot of what we're seeing, and I did poll, just informally the past few weeks, right? Just I think where we're located becomes more and more centric to a lot of growing activities that people traveling into this area would find very attractive. And being able to have a short-term rental, right, would actually serve their purpose very well.
Yeah,
Right?
well,
Whether it's a half an hour drive to a racetrack or a festival or a concert, right? It's something that I expect, because the other thing we're doing when we also introduce the code is now we're saying here's a way in which you could do this as a homeowner, right?
yeah, that is true.
Yep. Right. So I think we need to be, I mean, I'm going to say a statement everybody agrees with it, right? We really need to be really, really judicious that what we put in place will be for the benefit of the community at large, not just individual homeowners, right?
Yeah.
Who either want it or don't want it, right? It's really going to be something that benefits the community at large. And that's why I think going back to the comprehensive plan, so I think I've heard clearly what you said, Elena, right? That we need to take an approach here that makes sense relative to what we define this town to be in the comprehensive plan of the town, and let that conclusion fall out as to where we're going to allow this or not. Right? Have a well-established logic to how that determination was made.
And I can just add to your question, slide 4 or whatever.
Mhm.
So I did a little bit of research of exactly the distinction is what's been held unconstitutionally. It actually went to the federal court out of Austin, Texas. And essentially what happened there is you had somebody who purchased a home in 2014 for the intent, it was like on Lake Austin, for the intent of renting it out, never being a primary residence. It was just going to be a short-term rental. In 2016, the city of Austin implemented new regulations. I won't get into the complexity of it, but essentially prevented them from being able to do it because it wasn't their primary residence. Didn't get into host versus unhosted. You could have a secondary residence that you host and have it not be your primary. But in that particular case, because it wasn't their primary, it was deemed unconstitutional. So I just wanted to make that
Okay.
distinction as we talk about
Yeah.
hosts.
Yeah, but with the definition of at least host being present as to
Right.
what
You can have a
Elba has.
secondary house,
Yeah.
still be
Okay.
present as a host.
Thanks for answering that. That one makes
Trying
sense.
I just wanted to kind of.
Yeah, so any mechanics suggestions of how we do this with the comprehensive plan? I mean, I had one dumb idea, right? That you just go through and read through the whole thing and check the box and don't check the box. Is there a better way?
Yeah, so I think the one thing about this plan that's a useful tool is that there's 20 neighborhoods that are broken out. Now, they don't necessarily align with the current zoning,
Yep.
but there are some overlaps in some of the neighborhoods. But it gives you a pretty clear distinction of what the building typology is there for if there's a lot of residential buildings in those areas, the description of the development patterns and when they were developed, and then the intermix of commercial that's also there with some amenities. So those first 7 or 8 pages are a good jumping off point. The zoning map is probably the next piece of information that you want to go through. And then you can make your matrix off of that to see.
Wow, you're saying you, Dave. Shouldn't that be we? Shouldn't that be a we?
If you're saying
Well-
do it by neighborhood,
Right.
then I think you're leaning toward elitism again.
I do too.
But
I
the-
don't know how that
I don't know
those
how
are
either.
combined. I don't know how that's going to be received any differently than segregating.
Hang on, but hang on. Let's time out. It's
Oh,
our
maybe.
it's our comprehensive plan.
Yep.
It's organized the way it's organized. We didn't.
That's what
We're
I'm
not
thinking.
reorganizing it for this discussion.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And it's what we got, right? Along with the zoning map. And the comprehensive plan does refer to the zoning of each of these 20 or whatever the number is. And so I'm thinking it becomes important for us to define what are the 3, 4, 5 key questions or characteristics that we're going to ask each of that section of the comprehensive plan relative to short-term rental. All I got so far is hosted versus unhosted.
Yeah, and I mean, unhosted, I think almost uniformly can be treated extremely, extremely. It can make it very hard to have an unhosted short-term rental in your community. I think it's generally accepted that if somebody's purchasing a property to make money off of it, that you can be pretty strict with those. It's the hosted ones that I think you can control them and be really careful and thoughtful about your regulations to make sure that they, will be something that can, won't be a detriment to the neighborhood and maybe can enhance, because I don't know if we can get into this or not, but Leslie's brought it up a couple times, and Andrew Millsbaugh from our Complete Streets Committee sent this to you also. Like, is an interesting idea to think about or hosted for short-term rental, but also hosted for long-term rental as a portion of your home. You're not allowed to do that right now, but like we're struggling with housing crisis, and we're struggling with affordability in Niskayuna, and we're struggling with people being able to age in place. So if it makes sense to allow a home to have a hosted short-term rental that's not going to negatively impact the community, maybe it also makes sense to allow a house to have a hosted long-term rental as long as it's not negatively impacting the community. I don't know that
And
we
we
can
used
write
to
that into
allow it.
this code, but
Yeah.
it's something to think about because it allows, someone who's older, living in a home by themselves, to stay in their home if they're able to rent a bedroom. It could allow families that couldn't afford to rent a whole home to come here and enjoy the benefits of, Niskayuna schools and things like that. It's a larger conversation, but when we're talking about adding new units to Niskayuna, maybe that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. So I think we definitely could, look into that. I was just thinking more about these other criteria, right? So could another criteria be then specific limits that go along with our comprehensive plan? So
Yeah, and one
it's
thing
not
I
square
wrote-
footage, it's not number of rooms in a house, but it's like for this neighborhood, no more than X.
Well, yeah. And I mean, one thing that I put in there, and I've had the formula highlighted, is, having a home with 8 bedrooms is extremely unusual in Niskayuna. I think most homes in Niskayuna are like 2 to 3 bedrooms. See, maybe some of them have 4. But
There's a lot of 4.
Is there a lot of 4-bedroom houses?
2 to 5 would be.
2 to 5?
2 to 5 is a good number, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my neighborhood doesn't have a lot of those big houses. So
McMansions tend to have 4 or 5.
like if we're thinking about like what would make sense both short term and long term, maybe our cap is you can have a hosted rental, but you really only can rent more than 2 bedrooms or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
we
just
can.
a limit. Like we'd say for home occupational use, you can only use 15% of your home if you're going to do hosted. Maybe the formula isn't. Maybe there is no formula.
That's right. Maybe the
Maybe-
formula, maybe it's
maybe
a
just
spec
like,
based on a.
if you want to
a
rent
neighborhood.
2 bedrooms of your home, we can do these calculations. Most homes can fit that, and that won't necessarily negatively. I don't know. It's a part of but I did put that in there because it is a mechanism we have in our zoning that it's only a certain percentage of things in your home that are allowed to be something like that.
Home occupation units can only take a
There's
certain
a
amount
home
of space.
occupation. There's another thing in our zoning that is, rather than a formula, which may be hard if you get onto the high end of a house on a bigger house.
I think you're just going to have people, I think you're going to have people saying it's a hosted rental and then it comes back to enforcement.
Yep.
I don't,
But
I think there's it's a
going to come
wonderful,
back to
right.
enforcement. It's always going to come
Right.
back from it.
So I think to your point, it's giving it teeth so that when those outlying problems occur, you have a mechanism. I think we go back to that.
And I think Niskayuna or New York City may struggle, but it's not going to be like to Dave's point. It's not going to be as hard. Like we may have 1 or 2, but like that are really pushing the boundaries. But it's not going to be like 5,000.
No.
Did we clarify as a town that hosted means that the owner must be in the building the nights it's rented?
That's why I was highlighting that definition, just so you guys could see. It's not anywhere else in the code except for the definitions, but you always come back to the definitions. And I know because Laura and I were talking about the 184 days, and I kind of misunderstood what her concern was. But then I read it in her letter, and that's the 184 days, I think, is probably somewhere in the world as what you have to spend in your home for it to be your primary residence. My guess is that comes from something far beyond North Elbla. But the important part of the hosted short-term rental definition is that you have to be there when it's being rented.
And do we as a group foresee upholding that definition of hosted?
Anything that we adopt, we would attempt to uphold. It may be difficult at times, like to be knocking on a door and saying, "Where's the owner?" But it doesn't mean that you couldn't try.
But I'm just asking this group, are we going to adopt hosted, meaning the owner is present?
I mean, so I've said before, personally, I'm always going to look for what's most restrictive. And so that sounds like the most restrictive. So
Are we all
I think,
kind of in
I
the
think,
same-
I think I would be, yeah.
That's what it says in the definition now. Owner stays overnight during the entire term of each short-term rental of the property.
Okay.
All
right. I just want to have something to operate on.
Adjustment, because there are people who work nights.
Within the 24-hour period,
Then they,
the host
Yeah.
will be present.
I don't know. But then maybe they can't do short-term rental.
Number of hours, yeah, something like that. I know a whole bunch of people who work nights.
So they're not going to be short-term renting, Leslie.
Yeah, I was gonna say though, I don't, this
the owner's
particular
sometimes
definition.
owner,
Early in the
right?
morning, if
Husband, wife,
something's amiss, they'll know.
So one of the things that CRTC said though was that these definitions are very strong. And so although it may not be perfect for every single human, my recommendation would be to leave it the way that it's worded, if we're okay with it.
So how are we going to divide labor here? Is it just me and Nancy, or are we going to just take, we divide 20 neighborhoods by 7 of us? And
Right.
we need it, but we need a uniform criteria, or we need a uniform set of characteristics.
I would recommend someone write that in a very clear fashion of what your vision of that is, because I'm unclear how we're going to separate.
Yeah, I was trying to bring up the comprehensive plan so we could at least maybe just look through one section and just see how it would go. But darn, I'm having a hard time finding it.
It's right on the
neighborhood
homepage of the planning department on our website.
Yeah, I know. That's
If you
where
go
I
to
went. for it,
government, or if you go to departments and then planning department, planning.
but yeah. So this new website is a little, it's a little funny.
The other option, I mean, is asking someone on the comprehensive plan committee. Dave, you're still on the committee, Dave?
I'm not.
You're not, like Dart or somebody to help out with that?
I don't see using it that way, because I think it would just automatically wind up being, oh, these are our nicer at CR1 neighborhoods, we can't have it there, we can dump it on R2. We certainly can dump
But
it
let's say I'm saying,
in
let's go,
North
let's go
End,
through the
dump it on
process, and if
South
that's the
End.
answer,
That's wrong.
but you're presupposing a conclusion before we went through the process.
We're not going to know until we
So-
take it apart.
All
Yeah.
of the guidance says it's important to tie to your comprehensive plan.
Right.
I don't think
It doesn't
I
say
think
to do
it's
it that way.
well, no,
13.
yeah, I agree. Like, it probably makes more sense to sit down with a comprehensive plan and look at the overarching recommendations for, neighborhoods and goals that the town has, and make sure that, the code that we're adopting aligns with those goals. And if they're missing, to make very specific recommendations to the comprehensive plan to incorporate into the next one. Because, these things, they're 10 to 15 years every time they change. Don't always have a crystal ball that works for the future. And, so there may be gaps there that we'd want to fill and make recommendations to fill as well.
So we found a plan. It's still, just to verify, it's still the 2013 plan, right?
Yes.
And I think it's starting the neighborhood narratives is probably the place to start, right? I'm not,
And then at the end of that chapter, there's the zoning map, which was then
Right.
drawn over with the neighborhoods labeled with dotted outlines over the zoning map. So
Yep.
it's the overlay that you would reference to see where each one of the neighborhoods is in reference to zone.
I mean, now that I'm reading it, these descriptions are kind of short, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
They're-
they're just defining an area.
Yeah.
Well, the
Rosendale.
neighborhoods carry forward throughout the chapters. So
Mhm.
probably you'd want to go into the land use chapter and then look at what the recommendations
Right.
for land uses are, and just be thoughtful that we're really just kind of making the distinction between like primary residential, highly commercial, and like those hybrid. But just so that you guys understand, there's not a whole lot of hybrid areas. So it's mostly, and it's still important to tie it to the comprehensive plan, but it's in reality as it's implemented on our town. It's mostly primary residential and then primary commercial.
And
So
where we have RP, they were residential, the professional offices went in largely over the objections of the neighbors. So when you say, well, it's the next neighborhood, the neighbors there, at least the ones who go back far enough, don't really consider that to be the case. They still regard their neighborhood as residential.
well, and one of the other things that we learned, I think actually from the Kia application, is that, you know, there are a number of houses in commercial highway, but they're actually not a permitted principal use.
But they were when they were built.
They're pre-existing
Pre-existing.
non-conforming. Yeah. So if you were to pick something like a commercial highway zone, it's not a permitted principal use. There's pre-existing non-conforming homes, but that is probably one of the only areas in our town that we may have some, you know, kind of equity issues or almost environmental justice in our town. We don't actually have any environmental justice areas in our town, but if we were going to pick one area that, like within our criteria, down south of Sage Street is probably one of those areas. So then you just have to be so careful.
ED3, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, the neighbors have over the years come in a number of times to complain they feel like they're stepchildren of the town.
Yeah. So but that all said, those are the things that we're thinking about. We still need to tie it to the comprehensive plan. There's no question about it.
But the people north of Providence on Balltown,
Right. And we want
Just as a for instance, right? There's a couple of zones in schools. You know, say we don't want short-term rentals where the schools within the zone.
so when we
I'm
do
just
that-
brainstorming.
No, I know, and it's a really good discussion. We have a code right now that you can't have, you can't implement, if you're an existing gas station or anything like that, you can't have a new place come in and sell cigarettes within 1,000 feet of schools. Like old stuff is grandfathered in, new stuff you can't have smoke shops and stuff go within 1,000 feet of schools. That is very specifically tied to data that we use to back up the 1,000-foot radius. There was peer-reviewed studies that showed that when children were exposed to those and saw them in the stores, they had a higher likelihood of choosing those products in the future. So if we were going to say we need 1,000-foot radius to schools, we are going to need a fact that says short-term rentals shouldn't be allowed within 1,000 feet of schools because, and that I think gets really difficult.
what's the harm to the children? Yeah.
Right. I'm struggling with the idea of tying it to a comprehensive plan
I am too.
because
We are a bedroom community.
No, you have to. I mean, actually,
you
our
have
zoning
to,
code
Laura, but
regulations come right out.
I don't, we start like, it feels like we're sort of brainstorming potential places to like lay this down. And I just don't, I mean, I think we have to figure out rules that apply to the majority of our
Yeah, I
community.
think so too. That's what I'm
because,
saying. You're going to have primary residential rules and you're going to have commercial rules. That's
Yeah.
what it's going to end up being.
And the comp plan does have a focus on maintaining our residential neighborhoods,
Mhm.
maintaining the characteristics of the town. Short-term rentals are not part of that. So in that sense, yeah, absolutely, it can be based on a comp plan.
Well, yeah, they weren't
Or tied to
contemplated.
it.
So you're actually you're asking and answering a question at the higher level, right? The recommendation I made was going through zone by zone, but you're saying actually,
You can
Right.
raise it up.
so, all right, so let's ask it
saying
as a
guiding
question. From
principle.
what we know of our comprehensive plan, does short-term rental actually violate the entire comprehensive plan?
So we can't do a whole ban. What we'd have to do is make a code that is going to protect the fabric of the communities and make sure that we're keeping the integrity of our residential zones. That's how it would tie into the comprehensive plan. Good to go into the comprehensive plan and find those specific recommendations that say, you know, we've had these conversations with residents. They want to maintain the residential community. They want to maintain the look and the feel, the trees, not the big, not garbage everywhere. Like those type of things are the why. And then our regulations say, okay, like these are the goals that we have for our residential neighborhoods. What kind of code can we enact that will protect these goals in our residential neighborhood that, can withstand litigation to some extent? We also don't have a crystal ball on that, but just don't want to do things that we know
But,
would get
but
it
everybody
thrown out.
wants to maintain the
Everywhere.
integrity of their neighborhood. And that's in our comprehensive plan, understandably. So where does this, you can't kick the can down the road. There's no place for the can to go.
I feel like this is a very philosophical conversation, but the code that we have before you is addressing a huge portion of the issues. We're really down to just a couple things, and I think that it would be good for someone to go into the comprehensive plan and pull out a couple recommendations that make our why stronger. But even if you were to go in there and go zone by zone, I mean, I think largely what you're going to do is say these are all highly residential, and so we would definitely recommend that it has to be hosted. And these are pretty commercial,
Yeah,
so
so
if they
Laura,
want to have some unhosted.
I'm hearing you loud and clear,
Yeah.
right? And that's why I've made this comment before. And so let's get the rest of the board to weigh in. We could continue to hash out the details of the code. But I think we're implicitly saying that it will apply to the entire town.
What you do, I think you can be much more specific to unhosted versus hosted. I think you can really limit where unhosted things go.
So,
And, Elena, you
so
can
that, so I
jump
think
in
that
if-
represents a crossroads decision for the board,
Agreed.
Yeah.
right?
Something I'm just thinking about, I'm just kind of speaking out loud, and maybe it's something to look into to see if other municipalities have done it. But maybe the restrictions are somewhere in the form of like a special use permit.
Communities have done special use permits for.
My thoughts are just that then they have to come before the board, you have the public hearing. It's much easier to, if they're not in compliance, to revoke a special use permit. I'm not saying necessarily a special use permit for every single zoning district, but in zoning districts where we want to be more restrictive, or if we want to be more restrictive with unhosted versus hosted, again, I'd like to look into that from a legal standpoint. But it's, just as I sit here, I'm just thinking it might be a possible solution to some of the.
I've seen that in multiple codes as a special use permit.
I just would like to look,
Yeah,
I don't know where, if you remember,
process.
we can talk tomorrow or whatever, but where we've seen it, I'd like to look into it, to see how they structure it, if they do it, if they do, special use permits for hosted versus unhosted, or if it's just STRs altogether. You know what I mean, like those little details I'd like to look into, to see how it's been structured. in
That would be big.
municipalities, and if those municipalities kind of compared to Niskuna, or are they larger or smaller?
Yeah, I mean, for me, going through the comp plan, one thing, and I like that idea. So it would be, so that might be as we go through these sections, special use permit required or not. The other thing I thought was coming out of that, or that is coming out of that, is some non-formulaic based on square foot limitation to the amount of renters you could have.
Yeah, as
Right.
another thought, if you're thinking about possibly providing both short-term and long-term housing options for a portion of a home in the town of Niskuna.
So we would probably still, if it was a special use permit, would we have to put parameters as to how this board into the future would weigh those decisions?
Well, the special use permit has already got criteria that's outlined within our code. Typically, if you were just going to say short-term rentals are a special use permit in an R1, R2, R3, RR zoning district, then it's going to just fall into what a town board regularly reviews. It wouldn't have its own criteria. It's going to have a special use permit review criteria that's already
So
applied.
we wouldn't have to be as concerned about, like, I love the idea because we can look specifically at the house, the adjacency that house has to other things, all that stuff.
Size
And then
of the
make
house, yeah, park, yeah.
parking situation and, proximity to more sensitive situations, whatever it might be. But then someone might come in, well, this person got approved, but we didn't get approved. And then we have to defend that.
It's not any different than.
Anything
any-
else, variance,
We
special use, yeah.
get the special use permits for the daycare centers. Those ones typically get approved, but I'm just saying, like, in every single case, you always run the risk of somebody saying, well, you approved this one, you didn't and approve that one. We get it with the zoning board with the fences, 6-foot fences. People are always driving around the neighborhood saying, well, there's a 6-foot fence over here and I'm a block away, so what makes mine different?
But it would all be public and people would get a sense of why we choose not to and why we choose to.
Plus you have the public hearing, so you get to hear,
Right.
concerns
But I think
that-
it's a built-in-
that you may not
Yeah.
know about.
I kind of like it.
And it's a built-in deterrent.
And there's not
frankly,
going to be a
for
lot
certain
of
people.
frequency, as Dave has pointed out, and we all see the numbers. But that means in Niskayuna, you can play. You just have to sit before the board and present how you're going to be a good manager to the community as a short-term renter. Yeah, or
One
long-term
downside- The downside of special use permit though is that it runs until the person ceases
To own the
use.
property.
It's tied to the use.
But if you, could a condition of the special use permit be based on the complaints and, the things that,
I'm not saying, well, it could be if it's a conditional special use permit, right? If you put the conditions.
But you
In it.
can't tie a special use permit to a person.
Not to a person.
Right.
Yeah.
To
I'm just
ownership
saying,
or
the
no?
deterrent, if you have a bunch of conditions in the special use permit, yes, you can operate it as an STR, but you can't have more than X number of people present and all that stuff. That's all conditioned and then they violate it. Then they can have their special use permit revoked.
And does it,
I'm not saying it's the answer, I'm just kind of putting it.
No, I
as
Yeah.
a potential, and I'd like to look into what other municipalities have done and how they've structured it to see if it makes sense.
does the special use run with the property or run with the owner?
Yeah.
It runs with the
property.
use
the use?
of the property.
So that's why I don't know if there's any way to limit that in any way as far as time periods.
So I like keeping it down to like a year at a time. Because at some point,
Yeah,
people are
so
gonna
the
get tired
difference
of
between a
reapplying.
special use though is, well, I guess we could look, but if it's a section of its own code and it requires an annual license, it gives us kind of a constant point
You
of
could do
contact
both.
with the person. Possibly. I was just looking at where
That-
we have
That's interesting.
extra regulations. I don't know. So there are things that we have in our code that require a special use permit and have supplementary regulations. But if it's granted a special use permit, I mean, the use is allowed, whether or not you'd be able to license it every year would be a question. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love the public hearing aspect of it. That gets,
Yeah, that's a great, because.
but I think that the
but by
licensing
the
side
same
of the
token,
code is it's published
We
online.
could define a
and the-
new permitting process that'll have characteristics of special use and, right?
I don't know because the special use and those are all derived from New York state law. So you
Yeah.
have to be a little careful about making sure that you're not creating something too new.
But the public hearings,
Somebody should have told that to the
Aspects.
Airbnb guy. Be careful, you're not creating something
sometimes
too
just
new.
going before your neighbors and hearing how much they don't want your project.
Well, and it helps you to identify potential issues, I think, up front and try and mitigate them, through a site
Yeah,
through a site plan.
and neighbors are often very good at pointing out the limitations of a property.
So Laura, special use permit, just to digress just a bit. Somebody wants to use a short-term rental. How would in order for us to say, you need a special use variance or permit, how does that, what am I trying to say?
We still have to have code
Yeah.
Okay.
that tells them to go
Okay.
there. That's the
Understood.
direction you have to take.
Got it, okay. So we have to have something in the
We still-
code in order for them to say,
Yeah.
to
It's
narrow
it's
that
allowed in
down.
these zoning districts with a
Yeah.
special use permit, and then maybe there's different criteria.
Okay, okay.
I mean, so far, I'll send this to you too.
Yeah.
So far what I have are, again, going through each of the neighborhoods in the comp plan, characteristics to look at, right? Hosted versus unhosted, limitation on number of renters, regardless of square foot or size, right? Special use process versus some other permitting process,
Yeah.
taken, copied, invented.
Yeah,
whatever.
right now it's basically a licensing process. That
So I should say,
has to be.
instead of other permitting. So other licensing process.
And you said something about limiting, that was,
Yeah, limiting the number of renters.
right, and that could be based on, bedrooms.
That's right.
Or a percentage of square footage of the home or whatever. right?
Well, yeah, I was thinking maybe to something that moves us away from necessarily size more that's in line with what the neighborhoods are.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I ask, because I have not done the like random Airbnb thing, when you say there's like a handful, are they typically like Milton Keynes where they're like 12 bedrooms? Because I'm also wondering, do you need it to be a certain size in Niskayuna in order to make it cost effective to do?
You mean the regulations?
No, I mean the people who are renting. Are you
Oh.
seeing a?
I
Are
can
you
make
seeing?
a stab at this as a real estate agent, but
Yeah.
it really depends on the financial sort of structure. So if you're retired,
it's
you own the
home and
home,
you own it,
completely
right,
own
right,
it,
right.
and you are in this, you're noticing that visiting nurse is a new place to live, and you're going to go spend more time in Florida. I
You don't need to
a
make
lot
a
of money. I
ton
just
of
need to
money
cover
to-
my
Mhm.
costs. And that's what I was saying, that giving every residence, no matter what zone, the opportunity to use that as a tool is a good thing, because it's a way for you to keep your place active, not have people looking at the piping in the winter, whatever. But yeah, no, it depends on the financial structure of that particular unit at that particular time for that particular person, I think.
Right.
But yes, when you have a really big house that has a lot of amenities, then you can
Make money.
make money.
Yeah, I for some reason probably was born this way. I am not like the best at that program. But so every time I try it, I'm only able to get 4 or 5 in this unit to show up. But my assessor says that he can get like 13 or 15 to show up. And I don't know why he can get so many more than I can. But I think there's only 2 that are large.
Okay.
The rest of them,
That's
I think,
helpful.
are probably actually violating the code right now, and they're actually just trying to rent a bedroom out. I think we really, literally have 2 large homes.
So on this note that we're on, I was going to save it until we got to a good point here in terms of what to do next. But is it possible, as we're going through this code definition process, that we could actually call for a moratorium?
You can call for a moratorium. It doesn't impact, right?
Whoever's got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I meant just more.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah, and that was another question actually that one of the residents had, is that if we enact this code and somebody actually already has a short-term rental, are they grandfathered in? But I thought that as long as it was just an annual licensing requirement, that they wouldn't be grandfathered in. But if we make it a special use permit, then the use might be grandfathered in.
If you do it as a licensing, they're definitely not grandfathered in. If it's a special use permit, you might end up with a legal non-conforming.
Yeah, so that's just another question to think about. I don't see a high activity or short-term rentals in Niskayuna. I don't feel like I would recommend that we need a moratorium. I think that the time is better spent on getting a regulation that is in a good place that we can give to the town board and be happy with.
Yeah.
You guys are always allowed to overrule me. That's just my opinion, though, obviously.
Well, all we could do is recommend it to the town board. Anyway, it's a town board action.
Yeah.
You can overrule our opinion.
Yeah, we all have the ability to be overruled.
but but as I mentioned before, and just to reiterate it, right, the mental perspective, looking into North Elpa, going through the details in the code, like I said, for me that means that we're making an implicit assumption that we're just going to go do this, right? Regardless of where we're going to have it be applicable to the whole town. The perspective of looking at the comp plan is how we could actually restrict it to certain parts of the town, right? So I'll also speak for myself. I'm willing to, I'm willing to fall in line with, maybe fall in line is the best word. I'm willing to accept that we just say, you know what, it's going to happen in the town, and here we're going to go and regulate it, versus, blanket happen in the town, versus say, no, we don't want it everywhere in the town. And wherever we're going to have it, we're going to regulate it. So that's just me.
Yeah.
I mean, others can speak up.
I think we're on 2 paths, right? We have
Yeah.
the code we're working on, and we have suggestions. We take a look at the suggestions. We work parallel paths until
Yeah, so for me, in my mind, the next steps are still to be able to answer where in the town is it most suitable, consistent with the comprehensive plan? And then how do we regulate it in those locations? As opposed to focusing on the regulation and then saying eventually it'll be the whole town.
Yeah, so, and just to, this code is very distinguishing, the one that is presented to you guys in this packet, is very distinguishing between unhosted and hosted. It basically says you can, right now, the way it was written, it says that the only place that you can have unhosted is an RP zone. So that's like extremely restrictive. I just didn't have a chance to put in any other zones. I mean, the way, if you were to adopt it today, it would say that unhosted homes, which I think right now are the problematic ones that we have in our town, would only be allowed in very restricted zone. A hosted situation would be allowed anywhere in town, and these are the rules for it.
Correct.
That's the way that code, the code that is in your packet is written.
Right.
In my mind, the unhosted should be restricted to R3.
Yeah,
I really wish that we wouldn't say that.
Yeah, and so
But that's where you've got that kind of turnover anyway.
right.
I just think that pushing, if we're trying to keep neighborhoods and communities, then it doesn't matter if it's R3, R2, R1, or RR. The fabric of the communities and the multifamilies are essential to our town, and that they need to be treated the exact same as any single family home.
Yep. And so for me, Laura, personally, right? So my
This is where
I don't think
an
we should go
employer
down that
rents them
conversation.
and they move people in and out constantly.
I
Well, maybe not constantly.
don't recommend going down that conversation.
Yeah, I agree with Laura.
yeah, and so the bigger challenge for me actually is actually the hosted one.
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
the
challenge.
semantics that I think you
Right?
and I keep going to. Yeah,
Yeah.
because this code is very restrictive in some way.
No.
Yeah.
The unhosted one for me, I think that's a very straightforward one to restrict very, very significantly, very straightforwardly. For me, it's actually the hosted one, because then it brings in everything that the team discussed before about, it's fine. Is it, they have to be there at night? What's the enforceability of that?
Yes,
Or they got to be living there for 180 something, right?
but just
What's the
consider
enforceability of that?
the standard for hosted is that it's a home and that you live in it. So how is that going to work in anything but a residential zone?
Yeah.
No,
And it really is,
remember I said I can
If you
accept
want
I find myself that I can accept
Right.
that from the logic of it. It's
If-
just that as a board, do we just want to, so forget about the comprehensive plan mapping and just say it's going to be in all of our residential districts, it being hosted short-term rental, and we're just going to go and,
My view is that's where it's going, is my view. Well,
Mhm.
I think when you look through the comprehensive plan, you're going to end up there anyways,
I do
my
too.
opinion.
if you're hosting a short-term rental and you can't stand the people you've rented to, you got to realize your neighbors can't either. And it
So
should
there's like a
discourage
built-in
renting them
safety
that way.
mechanism, right?
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
There's responsibility in my mind on the person renting the unit, whether it's 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, half the house, whatever. There's a responsibility to vet whoever you're renting to.
If they're actually staying
And I
there.
don't think with Airbnb, that's really, or any of the others, I'm not going to pick on just them, because there's a bunch of them. The horror stories I'm reading, too much.
no, it's just reviews.
They say they do. I think maybe they check for financial solvency, but I don't know that they go beyond that.
No, they don't.
No, they don't
I
check for
just
that,
did an
yeah.
Airbnb last week.
It's just reviews.
And
It's just reviews. based.
And sometimes they don't even pay any attention to those. If
Yeah.
you've got the green, you got the money, there it is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Financial solvency is the
No, I mean, you
One
pay
credit
you
card.
pay in
Credit
advance.
card.
Right,
yeah,
so
credit card.
that's where I think we can keep going around in a circle, but my concern is that we can treat the hosted, Laura, that you gave us, but to me, that's semantics, and I think it goes back to enforcement, because I think you're gonna end up with people saying, yes, this is a hosted rental, and they're not gonna actually live there.
Yeah, but you're also going to have people saying, yes, I can fit, and then have 10. It just, the point is that you're going to put something in the code that should protect the neighborhood, and, you want it to be enforceable, but the checks on that would be, you're getting licensing, you're getting voting registration, you're doing everything you can up front to check it, and then if all of that checks out, and then you're still having an issue with them not actually being there when they rent it, then they get those violations and they get the permit revoked. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to enforce whether or not there's an actual human being that lives there when they're renting it, but there's a number of checks and balances through the permitting process and through complaint inspections that would.
That's what we're taking
Yeah.
on. That's,
Yeah.
we're taking that on.
So we've got to make a decision and go forward, right? And for me, the
Mhm.
decision points is make the assumption that this will be applicable to all of our residential neighborhoods and go and get the right kind of code that'll regulate it, or still try to find a nuance between where we can have it and not have it, and go and regulate it.
If you're, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but if you're going to find a nuance, it needs to be database and
Yeah, no, based on, when I say the nuance, based on the comprehensive plan.
yeah.
Right. So I'll, what is it?
I think the goal of the Niskayuna is to protect the integrity of neighborhoods. So if we do it as a blanket approach, we're
All of
kind of
them.
doing both.
That's where I'm at.
All of them.
All of them.
So are we being specific in terms of hosted or unhosted?
Nope.
I'm still not clear on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Unhosted, I think you can limit to,
Yeah, the unhosted part's
you
straightforward.
know, very, very limited areas.
It's really the hosted one.
It doesn't hurt to look into the special use permit, but it sounds like there's some problems there, potential problems with continuation of use, with the property changing hands, so on and so forth. If you have a code, it applies, period,
But it seems to align with the why. Oh, you're going to buy a place in Niskayuna, you got to sit before the board and be approved. Oh, maybe that's not where I buy a commercial residence.
Yeah, also not having the code in place, gives them a heads up.
Right. You can go online and see it's clearly
Right now,
defined.
there's nothing, right? So,
Well, right now, there's nothing. Yeah.
But to just pull that thread, Chris, it would have to be I'm not going to go buy a place where I'm going to be living whenever I'm renting it out.
Right.
Short term.
It's very clear
Right.
in our code.
Yeah.
all right. What else do we need to do tonight? Do we need to go through any of the comments, or we'll take those and continue working on those?
So like I said, the only thing so the one other critique I have is I don't like the size based. I think our limits should be more absolute. That it,
Not a percentage of the
yeah,
home.
you're not a
like
percentage
just
of the home or not. No, it should
If
be
it's an
number.
option of like 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
I saw that comment too, and I don't know how you ever in a million years enforce that. I mean, I couldn't enforce it legally in Florida.
Oh, that you can only rent 2 bedrooms of the house.
2 bedrooms is different than a certain percentage.
Yeah.
I read a certain percentage of the home, if it's a certain percentage of the home.
Yeah, the percentage one just
Oh, you mean when I said in my comments, can we look at a certain percentage of the home? Yeah, because that was based on a home occupation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I mean, I think we actually, I think we should be able to, some combination of bedroom and then a number of renters and just, that's what it is.
which I feel like obviously that is in codes. Like North Elba has a limit of 16 people. So I think it seems like that could probably be a reasonable thing as long as you tie it to,
I think 16 is a lot.
Yeah, that's what North Elba has. I actually think it should be less than that.
Yeah, I think we got, 14 max.
And just a point of information, my understanding is if you do short-term rental, that income is taxable.
Yeah, this is just something Elaine and I would have to talk to about, I guess. But like, if we're saying that we're going to max it out at 2 bedrooms and maybe, the 6, we just would make sure that we're tying that restriction to how it's protecting the neighbor. Just like logistically, I think we could get there, but I definitely think that we'd want to say that out loud and have it on the record. 2 bedrooms are allowed because this is what we're trying to address here, and that's the max.
Leslie, back to your question, are you asking if I were to own a home and have some type of business where I'm doing short-term rentals, the money that I'm taking in would be taxed as income directly?
Taxable income, as far as IRS is concerned.
Yes, I'm not.
So if we had a registry, IRS would be free to look at that.
So inclined?
It's a public-
Of course they can.
If they had a reason to audit somebody.
I have a feeling people don't think it's taxable. And
And I'm not gonna, there's obviously write-ups and all that stuff, so I won't.
Yeah.
Unreplicable,
But-
technically speaking, yes, it's taxable.
oh God, many years ago, I had a discussion with a friend, and she and her husband at the time did in fact rent out their house for the season at the track. It was taxable then, so I assume it still is. But I don't think a lot of people understand that. Maybe they prefer not knowing it, I don't know, but.
Okay. What about tonight? Where do you want to go with this tonight?
So,
I think
so
this
Sarah spoke up and said, we can make the assumption that, let me
Mhm.
tell you what I heard. Tell me if I'm wrong. We can make the assumption that we just need to focus on the regulation and assume that it applies to the entire town for the hosted, especially the hosted short-term rental.
That's my, yes.
I think it's the best use of our time.
Should we vote on it? That that's how we move forward? So we can move forward?
We can do that. Sure. And the other option is to
The other option is to
go
use
with,
a comprehensive plan
or
and segregate.
especially, or some other means, I should say.
We are using the comprehensive plan, meaning we are a residential neighborhood.
Yeah, we are using it because we call it
No, but to develop a nuanced
nuance. No.
approach, right?
My personal opinion, again, I agree with Sarah, is that I think we stick and fine tune the code, whether we restrict the number of bedrooms or amount of people. I think we got a good basis here. That's been a good track record. And I think we can get there with what we have. And I think it avoids the potential issues with a special use permit. And again, respects all zoning districts, whether it be R1, R2, R3, RR, whatever.
So we are not using the comprehensive plan, or is that?
No, we are. No,
Okay.
we
In a
still-
global
we
sense,
still
not
use it.
neighborhood by
We're not
neighborhood.
gonna, go through the whole comprehensive,
Okay.
because I think the answer is going to come back right to where we're at. That's what I said.
I
And I
agree.
think, Sarah, I think we agree that we're going to end up right where we're at, and we need to have something in the code. And
So with that said, can we, as next steps, we did a lot of discussing as a board. I mean, I feel like maybe the next step is to go back and look at the examples that we've been provided within the lens that we sort of determined this evening. And then, I don't know, what would we get? We'd
Comments
give
back to
further
me?
comments back
Yeah.
to you?
Yeah. Yep, I think that would be good. A lot of what we discussed, I think, doesn't change the draft code too much, but I think we'd really want to focus in on page 6, which would be
Right.
like the maximum number of occupants.
Mhm.
Yep.
Um,
And the number of cars, I don't like tying it to the number of bedrooms, because in some cases, there's still not enough room on the property to do that.
yeah, and
I don't
then
want them parking on the lawns.
we have unhosted short-term rental permits allowing to be issued in the RP and the CN. So I think, well, again, you definitely can parse zoning out for unhosted. So we could look at what other zones that one almost is a zone by zone basis, but
Yep.
and then the other thing that we want, there was another thing I wanted. Oh, right now, this code limits the maximum number of permitted structures in the town as a whole. So if we want to keep that in there, we'd also probably have, if we want that, decide what would be an appropriate number of rentals initially if we were going to enact the code. It says the number would be set by the town board. And I actually don't know what the North Elba number is, but it's I don't know if we need that in the town of Niskayuna or not.
I wonder how that's equal protection under the law.
Mhm.
Like I've seen places where instead of like going on house.com or booking.com or whatever, they actually put rooms up on Airbnb. So I'm wondering if it's more to limit like things like that.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Versus like individual, like somebody's more, I mean, unless you're in a larger municipality, somebody's most likely not just buying homes left and right to use as short-term rentals. But if you have like smaller units that you're putting up, I'm wondering if the intent is to limit it in that situation.
No, I think you should take a look. You said we're not sure what North Elba does.
yeah, how many,
Yeah,
what their
and what
percentage
the
of
basis
permits
that.
is for
So
the
that would be
homes.
information that we would need, just to.
Yeah. So I think that regulation is getting at, my understanding of it is that, like, say you have 8 homes on a cul-de-sac, they're trying to limit it so that the number of short-term rentals that are allowed, like if you don't have a cap, you could get to a point on a particularly scenic street where 7 of the homes would be short-term rentals and only 1 would be a full home owner. And also that one of the negative things that short-term rentals do is they drive up the cost of ownership. So if you limit the number of short-term rentals, then hopefully you're limiting those negative impacts of like honestly, a neighborhood turning over to a commercial neighborhood that nobody can afford to live in because they're buying the homes for a commercial reason. So I think that that's why Lake Blessed has a cap. But they have a lot of rules for their wait list and stuff, in which I was like, I don't think we need any of that. The only question is, do we want a cap? Is the question.
No. Just to confirm, do we want to cap the total number of permits approved?
Yeah.
And
But-
then do we want to do that total number across the entire town? Or do we want to have a cap per neighborhood?
North Elba has a cap for the entire town, but it is different for hosted versus unhosted.
So, okay, 'cause we had talked before about not having a cap because it would restrict everyone's equal opportunity to leverage that tool. Well, I guess we should vote on that.
Yeah, North Elba just does it on a first come, first served basis. And then the criteria for the wait list is that as long as you meet all of the requirements, you're number 1. And then if somebody sells, which actually maybe this is why they have the 1-year waiting permit before
Oh, yeah.
issuing.
That's right.
Maybe that's why.
That makes
That
sense.
makes sense.
Because then it's going to be a whole year before you're allowed to go back on the waiting list, and it puts you at the bottom.
Right.
Um,
And if you're buying it to rent it out,
you have to wait a whole year before you can do it. Probably
I
that's
think
why.
strongly we should come up with a cap number because 5 years ago, this wasn't an issue. Now, if we're somewhere in the 10 to 15 category, who's not to say 5 or 10 more years from now, we're tripling or doubling, exponentially going up. So
If we go down that road, I think we probably need to find out what the formula that was used for North Elba or
Mhm.
somewhere else, because if the number is too low, then you do get into issues. So what's the right number for Niskayuna? I don't know what the
Right.
answer is.
Yeah, I
for
don't
that.
know what-
So I just want to make sure we're not just arbitrarily picking a number that sounds good and that there's some type of formulation behind it.
I was against the idea of using the comprehensive plan neighborhoods, but for the cap, I actually think that might make sense. Some areas are smaller and more dense than others. And then maybe if we have I'm not saying we have to do it, but I'm just saying I can now see that cap being relevant to the neighborhoods. And because all of a sudden you're going to start to see certain neighborhoods get more. And then everyone wants that. And then we could put a cap on that. And then the demand might go down. And then they'll look at the other neighborhoods which aren't as good for it. I don't know. Just to,
So we'll look into it.
yeah, put it
We'll
out
look
there.
into what the formulas are that are used for caps. I think in some ways caps geographic caps make sense because again, you want to make sure that you're not allowing a singular street to turn.
It's preserving the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah,
That's right.
so that
Well,
may make
yes
sense,
and no.
but
I
we
mean,
should
I-
figure out what the formula is.
For whatever it's worth, I do think the cap is kind of anti-logic to a well-regulated code, by the way. If it's well-regulated, then why should you cap it?
Well, that's my thought. There's
Yeah.
in
It means that
regional
actually,
community,
what it
there's
means to me is
so
that
much
actually it
demand.
can never be well-regulated.
Well, no, wait, but Cengiz, what we're saying is, what Laura's saying is that it drives the price up of properties, and this is a residential. So if we have a cap to that, then we are going to potentially change the residential to commercial.
No, so I'm glad you brought that up, right?
Regulated or not.
this changes. So this changes what any community is about because it brings in this additional business commercial aspect to a residential property. That's why, look, I'm going to be a good team player and I'll say that I accept where I think we're going with this, but I do want to ask. I got to ask it, right? And we've been sued for a lot less, right? I still have a thought that short-term rentals violates our entire comprehensive plan and should not be allowed in the town of Niskayuna. And you guys and the town board has to tell me that you're going to get us sued because of that, and we're not going to take that risk. No, I mean, and that's fine because I feel when I look forward to the future, and I'm speaking personally, that we're actually going to change the characteristic of the town by allowing and regulating short-term rentals to whatever level we're going to regulate them, because at the end of the day, it's going to become an enforcement thing.
But isn't that more reason to put a cap on them?
So I'm not the cap, I'm cap or no cap.
Okay.
Like I said,
Okay.
like I said, the reason why I brought up the comment I made was you're going to regulate something and you're going to put a cap on it because you're recognizing that it's changing the nature of the town. Right? I mean, that's what that logic is. So
But now we have nothing.
yeah, agreed.
So this is going to put us in a position where there are regulations, there are going to be hoops for people to jump through. They are going to have to either.
As opposed to
pay-
saying that no, it violates the entire comprehensive
Right
plan of
now,
this town and we're not going to do it.
And there's no-
Exactly.
There's nothing we can do about
Right.
it. There's
So let me ask you, does anyone else on the board support the position that this violates the entire comprehensive plan and should not be allowed in the town?
I support that, but again, if it's going to end up being litigation that
We've been sued for less.
yeah, well, I agree.
And
think it does
I
violate.
would actually say I'd rather adjudicate that one in court. We'll have a strong argument relative to the comprehensive plan. We'll put our words down and say, here is what it is, here's how it'll change, and here's why it's violating the comprehensive plan. And yeah, I mean,
I don't disagree with you, but I think that the comprehensive plan isn't strong enough to support whether it's a rental or a home ownership. I mean, there's a lot of language in residential character and preserving neighborhoods, but this plan or the 2013 plan just didn't go to that next level about what comprehensive or what constitutes a neighborhood and what that makeup is. You can have R3 neighborhoods with a lot of rentals that are long-term renters that create community. And we have that in town. And there's other smaller neighborhoods where there's maybe a little bit more higher turnover, but there's still a sense of community. Again,
the keyword being long-term.
right.
Look, I understand where I came from in this last, diatribe I went through here, right? I'm willing to accept where we've said we were a few minutes ago. I just, there's a part of me that just feels that we're going to do something here. It'll be a significant change to the way the town operates, the way the town exists.
It's already
Yeah.
here, though.
The other perspective is my home is my castle. And I think we got to our home occupation use regulations because people were doing it. We had no control. And there were questions about how much of the house was being used for this home occupation and everything else. And we finally just regulated it. And people are supposed to register, and I know some do. I don't know that they all do, but some do. And if the home occupation becomes obviously a nuisance to the neighbors, they can come in and inquire and we catch them that way. And I think this kind of falls in the same category. Would I prefer there not be short-term rentals? Oh, yeah. I don't know that I could make a legal justification, nor do I know that the town itself could, no matter how good our attorneys are. I think it's being done all over the place. It's kind of an in thing. Some people really think they're very sophisticated if they can do that, that kind of thing. So I think our best approach is to regulate it, and that's why I've been advocating for regulation of it for several years now. Because I don't want it to become all over the place haphazard and with no controls on it. I think we need regulations.
Wait,
Okay, so what I heard is, you and Nancy and maybe Dave are going to just look into some broader recommendations from the comprehensive plan to make our why stronger.
no, I don't think we're doing that anymore. I think we're gonna go and,
No, not neighborhood by
gonna-
neighborhood, just broad recommendations. You don't want
And
to
they're
do
in
that.
there.
Yeah. It's okay.
no, I think, so what I think we're doing is we're actually going to say, here's what we're gonna continue the process we've been on
Yeah.
and draft
Ultimately
up the
tie
text
it.
of the code that would
Right.
be applicable in all residential neighborhoods of the town where the hosted rentals are concerned.
Okay. I think it's still good to actually have a couple bullet points from the comprehensive plan to support that approach, but I can work on that if you guys need me to. Or will you do that,
It
David?
would also help
I'm
support.
happy to dissect those out that would support that.
Yeah,
I
just
mean,
the
I
broader.
think a
goals. Yeah.
benefit to the comprehensive plan dissection would be along the lines of, again, cap or no cap, maybe zonal based.
I also just
the-
think like just to build a case of why this code belongs here and to make it very defensible, it's just good to have all of that backup. Yeah. Then we'll just look into the special use permit just so we have that nailed down just to know. We'll look at the restricting a straight up number of bedrooms, like I heard 2, but we'll like look at if there's a formula for how that works rather than have what's in the code on page 6.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
think
we'll
numbers
look
like
up
16.
that, and then we'll also look at how the caps have been working in other codes and what that formula is. And if you guys have additional comments, email them to me. I know I got a couple from Sarah and Nancy and Kevin. If you got anybody else has specifics, I'll email them to me. I did highlight, there's some additional comments in there that are like a little different than we had. I don't know that our attorney's office had a chance to look at all of them either.
Yeah, there's some
Um,
questions too.
Yeah, there's some questions
Yes.
to maybe some of the comments, but I feel like there's
Definitions.
enough questions here and it's late enough now that I'll take these, send any additional comments you have, and then I'll sit down with the legal department and come back with something pretty thorough for July.
Great.
And we also agree that we're not going to request a moratorium.
I wouldn't recommend that.
How would you control
I
it?
don't legally think that we would meet the 5 criteria, but as I said, it's a recommendation and it ultimately goes to the town board, but I have concerns about it meeting the legal criteria.
Maybe one thing you can do is take a look at what those criteria are and just let the board know at the next meeting what they are.
Yeah.
And so they can see whether to pursue that avenue or not. Again,
I mean,
this is a recommendation.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You were saying something.
There's one in particular, I don't have, it's just late, I don't have the wording like right in my head, but I know generally speaking, and so I can put it out.
Okay.
Once I.
I mean, yeah, we were under the impression 3 meetings ago, we were dealing with 2 to 3 properties. Now we're finding out it's actually 15.
Yeah, because I had a really, really
By
long
the end of the year,
conversation
it'll
with the
probably, by the end of the year, it'll
assessor
probably
about-
be 50.
Hmm?
By the end of the year, it'll probably be 50.
I don't think so, Jengus.
We could take a bet offline.
Okay, that sounds good.
Hard to measure it because it's like,
Yeah.
someone does it just.
Look,
this
look.
month, this does this month.
Look, folks, you guys know where we live, right? This is an awesome place to come stay temporarily, to be connected to 3 major cities, to be connected to about 100 different attractions throughout the entire year. Right? That hotel we never wanted to have in Niskuna, right? We're making all of Niskuna into a hotel. I will help craft what a good regulation looks like, but I'll go on record saying that, we're changing the character of the town.
I agree. I agree.
And we're sitting here saying that we all agree, but yet we're doing it
Well, I mean, I think if you put it up
because
to,
we're scared of a lawsuit.
well, I mean, I think if you ask most people, I think the PR part of me thinks that as soon as there's publicity about this, you're gonna start to see people protest it too. And I know what we restrict on
I have
zoning.
never
but-
made a decision in this board based on public opinion. It's always been the code, it's always been the law, and it's always been what's right for the town. I can say that very comfortably. Folks who have known me for a long time.
I'm not disagreeing
Yeah.
with you.
So the point being, the public can do whatever they want to do. and elected officials can do whatever they want to. I'm talking about,
But I'm saying I think most people will agree with you, is what I'm saying, is that they would say that there's no place for it in Niskuna.
Yep.
The question for us is what we do to sort of strike the right balance.
I don't necessarily, it's not being afraid of a lawsuit, like, we've already had municipalities get sued for not even that like bans, just being more restrictive with certain criteria, and that's been held unconstitutional. So, I mean, to me, a lawsuit's essentially guaranteed if we just outright ban it.
I mean, I think you're right, but most people would say publicly they're not in favor of it. But I think also those same people would say, I'm losing my freedoms as an owner of this property. I ought to have the option to use this as a tool. It's a very common tool now to owning and navigating your finances around real estate.
And they'll do it. They'll do it no matter if we
Fair,
do this or
fair.
not.
That's right.
But I think
You know.
what they say and what they'll do, we need to have a regulation.
And I still would advocate for allowing homeowners to take in a boarder or two. I mean,
Yeah, I would too.
And they are.
It helps them in a variety. of ways.
but we don't allow it.
No, but it doesn't
We
matter.
used
There's
to,
a
but
bunch
we
of
don't.
things we don't allow that people are doing anyway. You know, and this is just, and I understand, put something on the books, but I just,
But they,
I agree with James.
they become very much like a family unit. In most cases, not all, but in most.
Kevin,
All right.
we're continuing the conversation because we just don't want you to leave us.
That's
Good segue.
I think we're a good place to.
We're just gonna
We-
stay forever so
we-
you can never go.
We've got some next steps.
I'm gonna be
Laura,
real careful what
I
I
have
say.
next
We've
steps.
got next steps
Heaven
laid out.
filibuster.
We've got next steps
Wow,
laid
my
out.
God.
I know how to be a team player,
No,
but you
but,
guys know where my heart's coming from.
No, and yes, I know your heart's coming from. I know obvious, that's for sure. All right, so we're all set there. All right, so under reports, do you have anything, Laura or Mr. Henry? Do you have anything at all? Thanks for coming in tonight. You know, having you here. Anything under commission business, questions for the planning department or planning office? Or attorney, anybody? No? Late night, I understand. So the only thing, I'll make it real quick, a couple quick things. One is importance of project leads. I think, demonstrated tonight, you guys did some hard work, we appreciate it. But project leads, we need to step up for all the projects because it really makes the work easier for everybody else because, you're focusing a little bit more detail, delving in a little bit deeper. So it makes it easier for boards. So please, step up for project leads. We have several tonight that came on. Let's get somebody on those. And that makes work easier for the board. I think that's important. And I think we also talked a little bit, one of my other comments I want to say about differences of opinion. I think it's great because tonight we've had that. It's good to have differences of opinion because that's what makes a better product in the end. And the main thing with differences of opinion is that you respect each other. And even when it's all said and done, if it doesn't go your way, you still respect each other and just chuck it up to, that's the way it goes. It's a board and that's why there's 7 people and that's why we vote and life goes on. And I think we've done that, by the way. So I'm very happy with that. And because I've had difference of opinion with individuals and with projects, but it always works out okay. So just keep those things in mind. And thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to the planning office, especially the planning office, and Clark, Trish. We appreciate. Glad to have you on board. Sorry I won't be around to spend much time with you. The gentleman behind the scenes that we don't see is in the room. I'm sorry I forgot your name, but everybody's an integral part of making things go here. Ms. Cicchetti in the office and the building inspectors, Tom and Ken, everybody. It plays an important role. Mr. Henry, of course, and all of you, for your dedication. I appreciate it.
Kevin,
Has there been a longer tenure in a leadership role within the
No
town?
idea.
but actually to follow up on that, I am proposing, and I put in my email, that we'll have a resolution of recognition here at the planning board on the July meeting as well.
And we'll do something at the town board level too.
Yep. So town board, I am putting it forward for the end of this month, which is still funky because of the early voting. So it's a Thursday. I was just chatting with Kevin about that to make sure that it'll work. But I think it's the 27th for town board. Then it would be the, later than that.
26, I think.
Laura, not to be a pain, but maybe could you send out a reminder? to
Yeah,
us
I'll send it out.
Just because it's
And then
often, thank
also
you.
because this is like special. This isn't just like a couple terms. I mean, this is like, you know, it's such an investment in our town. Like, it's so unusual because it's a hard job and it takes a lot to balance and create the differences of opinion and still a good team. And I mean, that is just very good leadership that has happened, that the town has been fortunate enough to have for such a long time. And I mean, cupcakes is not enough, but I was
No,
we'll do like a
no,
cupcake
thank you,
party.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. And as far as the time, I have no idea, you know, how long, but I do know it's been 25 and a half years on this board and 26 and a half years with the town, because I started on the zoning board of appeals back in, I think, 98 for 1 year.
So just a quarter century.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Well, I mean,
you know, something I enjoy doing. I always wanted to get involved, and I sure did.
You sure did.
So,
Well, I feel like we're known for our excellence, and I think that's in a large part to the good
Yeah,
leadership
yeah.
and the consistency we've had. So we have some really big shoes to fill.
yeah, you got to look, we'll be looking at the agenda next meeting, you know that.
yeah. I mean, it's look,
Well, we know what the
That's
number
smiling.
one resolution is going to be. We were
Yes,
not
that's
going
right.
to put you at the end of the meeting.
No, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
boy, that's yeah.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved, Chairman.
Okay, motion by Mr. Laflamme, seconded by
Oh,
Mr. Khan. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sure no one's opposed. Thank you for a long evening and your hard work. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kevin, thank you very much. And,